Meet Ehan, our male lead. He's just arrived to see his grandfather, and as he steps into Grandpa's office, he spots an envelope, prompting him to casually question why he's been summoned to handle such mundane tasks. Grandpa, with a sly grin, reminds Ehan of his promise to take care of this stuff and challenges him to finish it within a day. Ehan, raising an eyebrow, asks if these are just boring receipts. He goes on about his involvement in various charitable associations, puzzled as to why a busy guy like him needs to bother with receipts, and in a dramatic fashion, tears one apart. Curiosity gets the better of Ehan, and he opens another envelope. Surprise! They turn out to be donation requests for noble causes, and Grandpa encourages him to contribute. Ehan, looking thoroughly surprised, asks if this means he can have free reign. Grandpa, with a knowing smile, suggests he already acts that way and gives him the authority to decide where the money goes. In an unusual moment of candor, Grandpa shares that he hasn't had a moment's rest since handing over the company to his son. He hints that if Ehan handles this task properly, there might be more exciting responsibilities in the future. Eager to please, Ehan promises to do whatever his grandfather wants. In the next scene, Ehan is sitting with his parents. They're discussing the trend of gaining experience before taking over a company. His mom suggests that trying his hand at jail hospital, with all its history, would be an ideal move. His dad has been eyeing it for a while, especially since the hospital chairman mentioned stepping down. Ehan, however, seems distracted during the conversation. They have to bring him back into the discussion and encourage him to participate. The scene then cuts to the prestigious Seomun Jail Hospital, where we see a doctor known as Dr. Young. She's getting questioned about a patient's vitals. She confidently reports that the heart rate is normal, and all other indicators look good. Dr. Haen is the doctor doing the questioning, and as it turns out, she's out protagonist. She hints that Dr. Young might take over the rest of the surgery, implying her possible departure. Some fellow doctors invite her to dinner, but she politely declines, citing other plans. Her colleagues are undeniably captivated by her. Dr. Young herself can't help but admire Dr. Hagen's charisma and cool demeanor. She wonders how a first-year fellow can be so perfect. Rumor has it that Dr. Hagen was quite popular at Hankook University Hospital, perhaps even the Queen Bee. Yet, she never complains about the challenging surgeries, even with a busy schedule. Dr. Young sometimes finds her a bit unapproachable but still can't deny her perfection, which makes her the rising star in cardiothoracic surgery. Hagen then bursts into Dr. Park In-myung's office and calls his name. She asks if he's getting ready to leave, and he advises her to be cautious. She admits that she came because of him and expresses uncertainty about what she'll do if he departs. He encourages her to keep up the good work. They discuss his job and the illnesses he deals with while she provides motivation. She advises him to rest well for the next 3 months and promises to manage things at the hospital, assuring him that jail, with its 100 years of history, will be just fine. Dr. Park's got a hefty dose of regret these days. He's second-guessing himself, thinking maybe he should have left Hagen back at Hankook University Hospital. He's putting the blame squarely on his own shoulders for being a tad too self-centered. But Hagen is having none of it. She's actually enjoying her time at jail hospital. Dr. Park's got this fire in his belly to stay put at jail and set up a heart transplant center. He's even got this grand plan to bring in the other Hankook alumni. He then spills the beans to Hagen about the new chairman, the Seomun Group's eldest son, about to take the reins. Word on the street is that this guy's tough as nails. Hagen, being the voice of reason, tries to soothe his nerves. She tells him to focus on getting back in tip-top shape so they can cut the ribbon together at the Heart Transplant Center's grand opening. She also promises to hold down the fort at jail hospital. Meanwhile, Ehan is having a heart-to-heart with his parents. He's questioning whether they want to shuffle him off to the hospital because his reputation took a hit after that merger fiasco. He's got a strong argument. He claims he doubled the company's sales and shouldn't be forced out just because of image troubles. His mother tries to preach the gospel of coexistence, but Ehan reluctantly agrees to go along with their plan. He figures he'll prove himself by boosting the hospital's sales within a year. He's not having any of his mom's matchmaking ideas, though, insisting she ditch that if he succeeds. With that, he makes a hasty exit from the room. In another corner of the hospital, Dr. Hagen has just wrapped up her patient update with her colleagues. She keeps standing, suggesting there's more to discuss. She drops the bombshell that their center's head will be MIA for the next 3 months. Then, she dives into her ambitious dream of creating a heart transplant center. The catch? It's not in next year's budget, thanks to the chairman's ailment. She stresses the need for a plan, especially with supplementary budget planning on the horizon. Her colleagues don't seem convinced though. They argue that it's unnecessary given the expectation of a new chairman soon. They figure only Dr. Park can champion this cause. The meeting quickly disperses, and one of the doctors even warns her about being overly ambitious regarding the heart transplant center. Haen doesn't show much reaction and just lowers her head. After the meeting, a few compassionate colleagues approach her, expressing concern and offering to help. She thanks them and asks for patience during the 3 months until Dr. Park's return. One colleague remains skeptical, citing unsettling rumors about the new chairman. The mysterious chairman's name keeps cropping up, causing unease. Haen assumes he's just another wealthy heir, but her colleagues reveal insider info from someone in the Seomun Motors strategic planning team. Apparently, he's no ordinary rich kid. Trying to offer solace, Haen reminds them that this new chairman is, after all, just a human being. Her colleagues look to her as their beacon of hope, their trust unwavering. Inwardly though, she's overwhelmed, doubting her ability to lead in such trying times. But then, she recalls some encouraging words from Dr. Park, urging her not to give up. With conviction, she reminds them of the hospital's promise, a dedicated transplant center for the cardiothoracic surgery department when they recruited Dr. Park. She adds that with her hardworking colleagues, they can make it happen, though she never expected to be relied upon like this. Curious about the chairman, she asks for more details. A colleague suggests they might be exaggerating, that the chairman isn't a monster. Haen seeks clarification on the term animal, and her colleague explains the chairman's intimidating yet captivating presence. This amuses her, and she quips that they'll find out soon enough if the new chairman is truly human. Just then, an emergency call jolts her into action. There's a patient in need, so she dashes off, unaware that she's about to cross paths with the new chairman. Meanwhile, our new chairman, Ehan, observes her swift run and comments on her speed, doubting she's a patient. Noticing Dr. Yoon's colleagues following her, his subordinate offers to find out about their department. Ehan, however, believes a hospital should always be bustling. The busier they are, the more money they make. Arriving at the emergency medical center, Dr. Yoon is briefed about an accident at a construction site that's made headlines. 2 patients were already dead on arrival. Neurosurgery and general surgery have been alerted, but she's the first on the scene. So she swiftly prepares for action, inquiring about the accident's severity and the patient's consciousness status. Another doctor provides vital signs and potential injuries. Haen suggests a tracheoscopy to assess the airways and immediate transport to an operating room. Noting that the patient's head seems fine, she believes that addressing the lung issues should set the course. She instructs the doctor to summon an anesthesiologist while she calls her team. Suddenly, the doctor interrupts, insisting they can't proceed without the patient's next of kin or a signed consent form. Unfazed, Haen firmly asserts that if 2 or more medical professionals agree, they can proceed with the surgery. She points to herself and the doctor, indicating their agreement with a confident smile. In another scene, we find Ehan in his office, accompanied by a curious little boy. The kid starts firing questions about why his grandpa left, even though Ehan is here. The little one thinks grandpa's acting strange, so Ehan tries to ease the child's worries by playfully ruffling his hair. He can't help but find the kid incredibly adorable. The little guy then asks if he can play with some papers and reminds himself of the rules for this paper play. Eventually, Ehan gives in and grants the child permission to do whatever he wants with those papers. Meanwhile, back at the emergency ward, Haen is persistently trying to convince her colleague, Juno, to go along with their proposal for a patient's surgery. But Juno remains steadfast in his refusal. He points out that the last time Haen initiated something like this, Dr. Park had to step in to assist. Plus, Juno mentions that he'll need consultations from both GS and CS. Surprisingly, Haen doesn't give up and continues her efforts to persuade him, but Juno keeps emphasizing that it will cost tens of millions of won. Their discussion keeps going back and forth, debating whether they should help the patient or not. Finally, Haen drops a bombshell. She mentions that she knows someone who can assist with the finances for the surgery. She informs Juno about a new foundation funded by a big company that helps foreign laborers with medical expenses, and Dr. Jang is one of their advisors. Juno is taken aback and asks if she's talking about the same Dr. Jang from Hankook University Hospital. Dr. Yoon confirms this and explains that an accident like this one will likely secure funding. Moreover, Dr. Jang had promised to assist her if the need ever arose. Therefore, they decide to move forward with the surgery on the patient. After the surgery, Haen calls Dr. Jang to share the news of the successful procedure, and they work out the details during the call. She then turns to her colleague and informs him that the doctor from Hankook University Hospital has agreed to handle it. She also mentions that someone from the foundation will come to get the patient's signature once they wake up. However, Juno expresses his concern. Not only about the success of other people's surgeries but also about Dr. Yoon getting involved in too many things. In response, she confidently asserts that her surgeries always turn out well, echoing Juno's thoughts. However, he still believes she should have stayed at Hankook University Hospital, as it would have been easier for her, and she could have become the second Dr. Kang Joo-hyun. While their conversation continues, Juno rummages through his lab coat and finally hands Haen a lollipop. Haen then asks what's so bad about jail hospital, and Juno teases her, saying that the renowned Haen is hiding out here, enjoying a lollipop. He then playfully asks what he gets for helping her, and she reminds him of a past incident when he asked her out during orientation, and she rejected him, leading him to cry by a streetlight. She says this memory will remain a secret as a reward for his assistance. Kyungmin, the guy who's come to find Haen, gives her the lowdown on the attending searching for her because the new chairman is rolling into town today. He spills the beans that this chairman is currently doing the hospital tour thing before his official big shot ceremony. Oh, and Dr. Choi was the lucky first one to meet him, and, boy, was he excited. Haen can't help but recall the strange rumor her buddy mentioned about this new chairman being part human, part animal. She nudges Kyungmin to stay cautious and not get too up close and personal. She even chuckles about how this new chairman's arrival feels like a scene straight out of a movie or one of those wild Greek myths. She chalks it up to their shared fascination with chaebol, all thanks to capitalism's influence. Now, when Kyungmin asks if she'd like to chat about the hospital's current situation, Chairman CEO Ehan politely declines, not wanting to hassle anyone busy. They go on to do the official meet and greet with the doctors. It's like a lineup or something. And when it's Hagen's turn, bam. She recognizes the guy right away, having bumped into him earlier with Director Haun. She figures it's her duty as a part of the jail hospital family to know the chairman's face. Haen starts blabbing about the chairman's fame, but he cuts her off, curious about what the gossip mill is churning out about him. She's caught off guard, and he quickly realizes he's played a joke that's made her a bit nervous. He apologizes and, like a pro, she promises to meet his expectations. He's sharp, he though, notices her body language, and suspects she's got something on her mind. But just as she's about to bring up the heart transplant center issue, her colleague barges in with a bombshell. The patient from earlier has woken up. Haen plays it cool, brushing it off like she'll swing by later. Little does she know, things are about to hit the fan. Turns out, that patient not only woke up but pulled a Houdini and fled the hospital. Dr. Yoon sprints to the ward to get the scoop. She asks if they've checked the CCTV footage. They've done that and called security, but the unfortunate truth is, the patient's gone, even swiping clothes from the hospital's laundry room and possibly hitching a ride in a taxi. Haen feels like she's been punched in the gut, contemplating a dramatic fainting spell as a solution. Her colleague, though, talks some sense into her. They urge her to stay composed. They're expecting a call from the police since security tracked the taxi's license plate. They guess the patient made a run for it, cause the hospital bills were stacking up. Dr. Yoon, though, thinks this could have been avoided if the patient knew his expenses were covered. While they wait for the police to ring back, she confides in her colleague, Minguk, that the patient's not likely to stroll back in willingly. In another scene, news of the case reaches the attention of the newly appointed chairman, CEO Ehan. He contemplates that it must be a substantial surgery, given the significant cost involved. The hospital's director provides Chairman CEO with the specifics, indicating that both CS and GS invested a collective 10 hours in the surgery, in addition to various tests conducted on the patient. After a thorough interrogation, Chairman CEO deduces that the catalyst for this event was none other than Dr. Yoon. His mind begins to ponder her true nature and motivations. Chairman CEO proceeds to inquire about the potential financial repercussions for the hospital. The director elucidates that while they may not be a prominent university hospital, they have successfully met all the required standards. He further mentions that, except for Dr. Park, the head of CS, they have not handled many major surgeries here. This unusual circumstance of a first-year fellow undertaking such a procedure raises eyebrows. The chairman, adopting a discerning stance, inquires whether Dr. Yoon maintains a close association with Dr. Park. The director elucidates how Dr. Park's contributions bolstered the hospital's reputation, leading the previous chairman to overlook some of his actions. However, he cautions against allowing Dr. Park to establish his own surgical team. The director suggests implementing disciplinary measures, and upon inquiry into the specifics, he elucidates that Dr. Yoon will be required to issue a written apology and preventive measures will be enforced to avoid a recurrence. Intriguingly, the director privately reflects on the Seo Moon Group's heir, who places a high value on tangible results. Such a figure is unlikely to support a non-profitable heart transplant center. The director also remarks that Dr. Yoon's case revolves around a compassionate female doctor dutifully fulfilling her responsibilities, capturing the chairman's heightened interest. Ehan decides to grace the inaugural ceremony at 2 p.m., and expresses his intention to personally validate the information provided by the director. Meanwhile, Juno takes a moment to inquire about Hagen's state of mind following the recent events, alluding to his earlier prediction that she might encounter difficulties. Haen requests his guidance and, in a jesting manner, asks him where she might secure 78 million won, and expresses her bewilderment that these events unfolded on the very day the new chairman arrived. Juno inquires whether she has engaged in dialogue with Dr. Park, and she confirms this, detailing the challenges posed by the patient's unexpected departure. Hagen's palpable concern for the patient's well-being strikes her colleague, who observes that she appears more preoccupied with the patient's welfare than her own uncertain professional fate. Juno endeavors to provide reassurance, assuring her that she will not bear the financial burden, and speculates that a written apology may be the extent of the consequences, given the chairman's lack of mention of severe sanctions. Coincidentally, Ehan and the director overhear Hagen's conversation with Juno as they make their way to the inaugural ceremony. At the ceremony, Ehan formally introduces himself as the newly appointed head of Seomun Jail Hospital. He also expresses gratitude for the attendance of all present and pledges his commitment to oversee and enhance the efficiency of all hospital operations. Implicitly, he conveys to Haen and the entire staff the importance of dedicated and exemplary performance in their respective roles. Juno advises Haen to avoid making direct eye contact with Chairman Ehan and to maintain a low profile. However, she remains resolute in her determination, particularly in light of the reliance and pride her colleagues place in her accomplishments. Juno finds her assertive behavior intriguing and privately regrets his previous advances during orientation. After Chairman Seo Ehan delivers his speech, the room erupts with enthusiastic applause. Amidst the cheering, he spots Haen clapping rather vigorously, but there's something about her clapping that piques his curiosity. He takes a mental note of her behavior. The director steps forward, offering commendations to the chairman, affirming that the speech surpassed his expectations and has likely motivated everyone in the room. The director then segues into business talk, mentioning an upcoming dinner meeting with the CEO of Daehan Pharmaceuticals. He adds that he's prepared a comprehensive report on pharmaceutical prices, sales, and companies involved. As the director delves into these matters, Ehan interrupts abruptly, demanding to see Hagen's resume. Meanwhile, in Dr. Choi Dukwan's office, Haen is enduring a stern reprimand from him. After taking the heat for a while, Haen decides to make her exit. Her colleagues await her outside, expressing sympathy for the scolding she endured. However, Haen appears unfazed and reassures them not to worry. She mentions that she just needs to find a way to grab Dr. Choi's attention, considering it's not the first time he's chewed her out. Her colleagues inquire about her plans to speak with the chairman, and she confirms her intent, with them offering to accompany her. Later on, Haen inquires whether the police or immigration authorities have made contact with the hospital. She's surprised to learn that there's been no response yet. One of her colleagues mentions checking the neighborhood where many foreign workers reside and attempting to obtain CCTV footage. They explain that they've been tirelessly trying to locate the missing patient. Haen apologizes for dragging them into her predicament, but they reassure her of their willingness to assist. One colleague shares information they've gathered about the new chairman, revealing that he's perceived as cold-hearted and resolute in achieving his goals. Their research suggests that his trust issues stem from a traumatic childhood kidnapping experience and that he's an illegitimate child raised by the family to protect their reputation. He often acts out due to anger towards his birth mother. Just as they're about to present more findings, Haen intervenes, emphasizing that it's unfair to judge the chairman based on rumors. They quickly apologize for their actions, and she excuses herself to meet with the chairman. Upon reaching the chairman's office, Haen initiates the conversation by bowing and offering an apology. Perplexed, the chairman inquires about the reason for her apology, to which she explains that it pertains to the foreign patient incident and startling him on his first day at the hospital. The chairman acknowledges the hospital's financial loss of 78 million won and asks if there are any undisclosed costs. He reassures Haen that he's aware of the situation, understands that it was beyond her control, and advises her to ensure it does not recur. He also comes to the realization that he has misunderstood her character, seeing her as just like everyone else. Grateful for the chairman's understanding regarding the patient issue, Haen expresses her relief and thanks him. The chairman concludes that the meeting has ended, but Haen brings up another topic, keeping it concise due to the chairman's busy schedule. Haen can't help but feel a sense of regret for bringing up something right after Chairman Seo Ehan's arrival. The chairman, however, is intrigued by her intention and encourages her to continue speaking. He's already sorted out the financial matter, and he decides to entertain her and listen to her carefully. Haen appears a bit hesitant to reveal the true purpose of her visit. Chairman Ehan begins to contemplate ending the meeting due to her reluctance to get to the point. Just as he's about to make that decision, Haen finally speaks up. She mentions that it's about the establishment of a heart transplant center. This revelation is so surprising that Chairman Ehan is taken aback, causing him to drop his pen. Haen proceeds to explain that the former chairman had made a promise to Dr. Park In-myung, a dedicated physician with deep care for his patients. The promise was to build a heart transplant center to entice Dr. Park to join jail hospital. She points out that while they do have a general transplant center, heart transplants are not offered. Dr. Park has been part of the hospital for 3 years now, and Haen believes it's time to address this matter. Chairman Ehan, however, questions the timing, especially since Haen had recently caused the hospital a significant financial loss. Haen acknowledges the unfortunate timing but insists that the heart transplant center is a separate and crucial issue. She explains that Dr. Park couldn't come himself due to medical leave, and this matter is vital for the cardiothoracic department's growth. Curious, Chairman Ehan asks why a first-year fellow like Haen is representing such an important matter. He expresses doubt about the feasibility of the project, given its likely high cost, and suggests that they shouldn't delve into it further without a written contract. Frustrated, Haen slams her hand on the chairman's table to emphasize her seriousness. In response, Chairman Ehan reminds her that just as she's devoted to her work as a cardiothoracic surgeon, he's equally committed to leading the hospital toward progress. He emphasizes the need for efficiency and occasionally taking a firm stance. Haen, feeling disappointed, questions why he appeared forgiving if he's as unyielding as he portrays. Chairman Ehan clarifies that he hasn't forgiven her. Haen blames herself for assuming that the chairman would overlook her recent mistake. He advises her to let the matter go and not worry about it. As she leaves his office, she pauses to ask if he meant everything he said, given her profession's focus on examining people's hearts. She wishes him good health and departs, encountering a man named Yuhan at the door. After Haen exits, Yuhan comments on her appearance and inquires about her identity, but Chairman Ehan silences him. Yuhan persists with questions, prompting the chairman to offer him money to keep quiet. The chairman then instructs Yuhan to leave and not visit his office unless it's essential. On his way out, Yuhan notices Hagen's resume on the table, with "Shameless Seal" written boldly on it. In a different scene, we find Haen deeply engrossed in her phone, furiously researching Chairman Co Ehan. Her colleague, Juno, enters the room, curiosity etched on his face, and questions her about the intense investigation. Haen looks at her findings with disappointment, noting the lack of any significant history about the chairman. She expresses her disbelief, asserting that someone as seemingly heartless as him must have some hidden backstory. He couldn't have just materialized out of thin air. In an effort to lift her spirits, Juno offers her a lollipop, clearly taken aback by her sudden sweet tooth, even in her current mood. Haen sighs and confesses that she doubts she can broach the subject of a heart transplant center with the chairman any longer. Juno, puzzled, inquires about her change in attitude and whether the chairman said something harsh to her. This question irritates Haen, and she questions whether Juno holds a negative opinion of her. Juno quickly offers her another piece of candy and offers words of encouragement. He reminds her of the times when she used to perform surgeries all on her own before their colleague Oreo joined the team. Haen adds a touch of humor, joking that if she had operated on Chairman Co Ehan, she might have discovered a vibranium battery inside him. However, Juno remains baffled because, to his knowledge, the chairman didn't raise his voice or express anger. He struggles to grasp why Haen is so upset. She retorts that the chairman yelling would have been a more preferable reaction, further confusing Juno. Finally, he asks her what's really going on and whether she intends to give up on the transplant center. Haen clenches her fists, the lollipop still in hand, and emphatically declares that she will never surrender, firmly asserting her unwavering determination. Meanwhile, Ehan offers an apology for summoning a specific staff member, despite the fact that he's no longer his secretary. However, the young man in question insists that it's an honor to be called upon by the chairman. This young man is revealed to be Kong Cutie, a former employee of CO Moon Motors and a current employee of CO Moon Group. He assures the chairman that he will always respond to his calls, making himself available at any time. Chairman Ehan then inquires about Dr. Park, and Kong Cutie explains that while there was a verbal agreement, nothing was officially documented. He mentions that Dr. Park In-myung is a well-known figure, and it seems that the hospital was willing to accommodate his requests to have him transferred to jail. Kong Cutie further notes that if this were a regular company, they would meticulously assess the pros and cons and formalize a contract, but it appears that hospitals operate differently. Chairman Ehan questions the lack of structure in hospitals, to which Kong Cutie responds that, based on what he has gathered, they often let things slide out of affection for one another. The chairman expresses his determination to bring about change in that regard. Upon their arrival at the hospital, Kong Cutie continues to ponder why Chairman Ehan remains at a place like this and why he wasn't promoted to the headquarters alongside him. He openly suggests that the chairman should try talking to his father again because he shouldn't be confined to a hospital like this. He questions the reasoning behind the chairman's father placing him in what seems like an unrelated hospital. Chairman Ehan interrupts him and reveals that the hospital is not entirely unrelated. They continue their discussion about the chairman's presence in the hospital and potential approaches to address the situation when they suddenly come across Haen. Ehan finds himself in the midst of a conversation with Haen, questioning her presence as he suggests they've covered all their discussion points. But Haen is unwavering, determined to continue the dialogue, firmly stating that they've only just scratched the surface. She proposes taking the conversation outside, but Ehan, instead, gestures for her to step inside. In the subsequent scene, Ehan's mother is engrossed in tending to her beloved flowers when her other son, Yuhan, startles her, resulting in an unfortunate accident that damages one of the delicate blooms. She confides in her son, expressing how much solace the plant brings her nowadays. Yuhan, with a hint of surprise, questions her sentiment, reminding her that she has two perfectly capable sons right there with her. In response, she playfully queries whether he considers himself capable and voices her exasperation, noting that one son is obsessively focused on wealth while the other spends it recklessly. She even jests about having wished for a daughter at times. She asserts that even though her younger son appears outwardly untroubled, he still manages to vex her daily. Yuhan tries to one-up Ehan by mentioning that he offers massages to their mother, unlike his older brother. Igneous. She quips that she'd decline his offer even if he did make one because he terrifies her. However, she acknowledges that having Yuhan around brings her a sense of comfort, and he playfully responds with a saying about the youngest child being the most dutiful. Suddenly, Yuhan playfully requests some money from his mother, but she swats his hand away from her shoulder, instructing him to go to school. He teases her, referring to himself as the youngest and cutest family member who shouldn't be addressed so sternly. However, her phone rings, prompting her to dismiss him with a wave as she takes the call. Undeterred, Yuhan continues to chatter about his visit to jail hospital to see his brother. It's only when he mentions that his brother is seeing someone that his mother abruptly ends her call. She orders him to return and take a seat, and with a smirk, he claims he's running late for school. Nevertheless, his mother attempts to persuade him to stay and chat with her about the woman he saw his brother with at the hospital. She wants to ensure it's not just Ehan's business partner. Yuhan explains that he doubts it's business-related because his brother even has a nickname for the lady in question. He guides his mother to sit and further explains that his brother and the lady were engrossed in a serious discussion. His mother is taken aback by this revelation and keeps seeking confirmation, while Yuhan reassures her that it's true. She then prods him for details about what he observed between Ehan and the woman, as well as what the nickname is. This revelation leaves her astounded, and Yuhan offers to fetch her a glass of water, inquiring whether he should also retrieve her purse. Meanwhile, Chairman Co Ehan and Haen remain engaged in their ongoing discussion. Ehan remains steadfast in his stance that the heart transplant center project cannot proceed. Haen, maintaining her composure, inquires whether his reservations are solely related to the transplant center or also encompass her personally. Ehan admits that it encompasses both aspects. He elucidates the extensive time and resources required for such a substantial project and expresses his hesitation to commit if he can't have trust in the individuals driving it. While he acknowledges Hagen's exceptional talents and promising future, he grapples with understanding her unwavering determination in pursuing this matter. He emphasizes his aspiration for his employees to function in the most efficient workplace in Korea. However, Haen interrupts him abruptly, stating her intent to repay the 78 million won. Ehan is taken aback by this revelation, and she reiterates her commitment to reimburse the sum. Haen continues her conversation with Chairman Co Ehan, determined to address the issue at hand. She begins by suggesting that if there's any problem he has with her, they should resolve it starting with her repayment of the money she owes. She then poses a hypothetical question, asking if he would reconsider the heart transplant center project if she were to repay the money. However, Ehan finds her statement rather amusing, almost thinking it's a jest. Haen earnestly attempts to convince him that she's absolutely serious and willing to return the money she has diligently saved. Ehan, intrigued, inquires about why she would spend her hard-earned money in such a manner, to which she explains that the transplant center holds immense personal significance for her. She implores him to take his time and merely consider the idea, even if he doesn't commit to its construction right away. She pleads with him to reconsider. As their conversation continues, Ehan's phone interrupts them with an incoming call, but he chooses to ignore it, signaling to Haen that there's no need for her to leave. Nonetheless, she insists on excusing herself, sensing the importance of the call, and promises to resume their discussion later. After she exits his office, Ehan answers the call, which happens to be from his mother. His mother playfully teases him, suggesting that he sounds unusually joyful, prompting him to clarify that there's nothing special happening. However, she suspects otherwise, even suggesting that he might be meeting a lady she intends to set him up with for a blind date. Perplexed, Ehan inquires if there's a reason she called other than arranging a date, but she denies it, stating she simply wanted to check on him. She playfully reassures him that she's not setting up a blind date because she's aware he's already seeing someone, confidently asserting that secrets don't stay hidden for long. She even adds the whimsical detail that he's not just seeing anyone but at Seal. It becomes evident to Ehan that this misunderstanding likely stems from his younger brother, Yuhan. Meanwhile, Haen sits outside, where a kind lady offers her a drink, but she politely declines, expressing gratitude for informing her about the chairman's schedule. They engage in conversation about the lady's grandmother, who is recovering well, thanks to the surgery performed by Dr. Yoon. The lady promises to notify Haen when the chairman finishes his call so she can return to his office promptly. Haen then reminisces about a meal she had with her colleague, Juno, who expressed surprise at her intention to repay the money, given the financial challenges she faced. Juno reminded her that she had already given all her savings to her mother to help start a store, leaving her financially strained and unable to cover even their current meal, let alone the surgery expenses. He advised her to reconsider, pointing out that 78 million won wouldn't make a significant difference to the wealthy chairman. He questioned her next steps, considering her inability to afford the surgery. Haen contemplated getting a loan but realized she didn't even know where to begin, coming to terms with the harshness of reality. She believed that she must strive to do better so that her two colleagues, who relied on her, wouldn't regret placing their trust in CS. Back in the present, the lady informs Haen that the chairman has finished his call. As she re-enters his office, she notices a different expression on his face, leaving her curious about its origin. Ehan, on the other hand, engages in a phone conversation with his mother. She gently reminds him that her birthday is approaching next week and suggests that it would be delightful if he could invite the doctor to the celebration. She emphasizes that she doesn't ask for much, just a chance to catch a glimpse of the lady he's rumored to be romantically involved with. She assures him that she won't pressure him to introduce the girl. A distant observation would suffice. She even uses the excuse of a company gathering to explain her absence and assures him she won't bother the doctor too much. To seal the deal, she promises not to make requests like this again if he grants her this modest wish. Ehan, curious about the repercussions of her breaking this promise, inquires further. His mother, somewhat proudly, mentions her role as the head of the Seo Moon Art Gallery. Ehan then playfully suggests that if she does break the promise, he should inherit the art gallery. However, she promptly declines the idea, suggesting that the doctor may have her own plans for that day. She attempts to conclude the conversation by mentioning preparations for food and ends the call. Chairman Ehan, relieved at the prospect of avoiding mundane blind dates, starts entertaining the idea of pretending to be in a romantic relationship with Dr. Yoon. As Haen enters the room and notices the call has ended, she approaches him, and he offers her a seat. Ehan then presents her with an unexpected proposition. In exchange for her desire to repay the money she owes him, she should pretend to be in a romantic relationship with him. Ehan sweetens the deal by offering her 10 million won for each meeting with his mother. Dr. Yoon is taken aback by this offer, causing her to question its meaning. The chairman clarifies that the payment is specifically for encounters with his mother, and if she's willing to play along, he will compensate her fairly for other aspects of their pretend relationship. Haen firmly declines the offer, stating that her profession involves healing people's hearts, and she refuses to engage in such deceitful behavior. She intends to pretend this conversation never occurred. As she exits the office, Ehan smirks and suggests that her determination to secure the transplant center might not be as strong as he thought. He reminds her that she once claimed that even his reconsideration would be a victory for her, and he believes the conditions he offered were reasonable. Haen stands by her decision and confronts Ehan, implying that he enjoys manipulating people to suit his desires, but a heart transplant center is a matter that shouldn't be taken lightly. She leaves 2 million won on his desk and declares that she now owes him 76 million won, promising to repay the rest as soon as possible. Haen exits the chairman's office, her mind racing with the recent encounter. The whole experience leaves her feeling deeply unsettled. Despite her ongoing financial struggles, she's not desperate enough to tolerate such behavior. The chairman's actions are propelling her toward a significant decision, the notion of setting up her own place, perhaps not a grand one, but with the support of her colleagues. As she walks away, her coworkers call out to her, with Oreo expressing surprise at her shocked behavior, even though he's supposed to be present. She inquires about his unexpected presence, to which he reveals his plan to leave Hankook University Hospital next year and hopes she hasn't forgotten her promise. In haste, she urges him to wait for her. Meanwhile, Chairman CEO Ehan is in his office with Mr. Kong, who's puzzled by the chairman's serious mood. Mr. Kong kindly offers to prepare a birthday gift like he did for the chairman's mother last year. However, the chairman interrupts, mentioning that what his mother truly desires is to see him with a woman. Mr. Kong comments on the chairman's mother always looking out for him, but the chairman contemplates the potential advantages of such an arrangement, possibly involving his mother's art gallery. As the young man exits the chairman's office, he reminds him to prepare a gift for his mother's birthday. Suddenly, Hyen enters the office, and the chairman welcomes her warmly, surprised that she's willing to see him again. She promptly asks him for the details of their upcoming date. The chairman instructs Mr. Kong to arrange outfits for a woman and a man at a boutique in Cheongdam. Hyen is taken aback by the idea of such pretense and ponders why wealthy individuals like Chables feel the need to bring a fake partner to their mother's birthdays. Her concern, however, should be more about herself than the chairman. She contemplates how to better understand Chables and flawlessly play the role of a girlfriend. She reflects that the last time she fell for someone was in primary school, making this a challenging task. Meanwhile, at the hospital, surgery is underway, and Hyen is leading the procedure while taking the time to educate the other doctors in the room about the surgery. Unexpectedly, she leaves the operating room, leaving the rest of the doctors to continue. As she exits, she encounters Kyungmin, her colleague, who inquires if she's just completed her surgery. She turns the question back to him and asks what he's doing outside, considering he had earlier mentioned he was heading into another operating room. Kyungmin explains that they didn't receive the green light from the anesthesiologist unit. They had scheduled the surgery, but Dr. Seo said they couldn't proceed because the patient hadn't been properly checked for underlying health conditions. So, they need to redo the CAG, coronary artery angiogram. Kyungmin asks Hyen for advice, and she reassures him that it'll be okay as long as they run the tests now. Kyungmin mentions that Dr. Choi is in charge, but Dr. Choi got upset and decided to go home, believing that redoing the tests would take too long, and he didn't want to reschedule for the next week. This made Dr. Seo angry, and he told Dr. Choi to do as he pleases. Hyen can't believe how they're behaving after the patient came all this way for surgery. Kyungmin continues, saying that both doctors had promised to follow the proper procedures, and Hyen agrees with them. She instructs Kyungmin to test the patient for allergies and get a signed consent form. Kyungmin apologizes for bothering her since she just finished her own surgery. Meanwhile, it's time for Chairman Seo Ehan's date with Hyen. It's also the chairman's mom's birthday. The director informs the chairman that he'll be accompanying him today because it's his mom's birthday. The chairman is surprised that the director knows this. The director explains that he knows the birthdays of both of the chairman's parents, and since the chairman is here, it's only right to greet them in person. Although the chairman doesn't see the need for this, the director insists, mentioning that he's the planning director. He offers to show the chairman the indoor garden in the lobby, but the chairman declines immediately. Chairman CEO Ehan then asks for financial statements from the last 3 years, a comparison of their doctors with the top 3 hospitals, information on their VIP wing, and staffing statistics by tomorrow morning. Afterward, he leaves. The chairman spots Hyen crouched behind the gate and questions why she chose this route instead of coming directly from the CS unit. She pats her hair and explains that she didn't want Director Haun to get suspicious, as he had been lurking around. The chairman suggests that she could have called him, but then he remembers that she doesn't have his number. Hyen mentions that she won't be able to go to the boutique with him tonight because she needs to finish a patient's test. However, she assures him that she'll still attend his mom's birthday party. The chairman smirks inwardly and says that's why she was hiding in the bushes. He asks her to be there by 7:30 p.m., and she agrees with enthusiasm. Ehan wonders if she has any other requests, but she hesitates and says she can't ask for more. Then, she decides to ask him what she had planned to ask at the boutique, what kind of things his mom likes. Ehan reassures Hyen that she doesn't need to worry, but she insists, emphasizing that she needs to do this properly, otherwise, it will feel like she's doing it for free. She reminds him that this endeavor was meant to help pay off her debt, and she never does things halfway. Regardless of the task at hand, she always gives it her all. Hyen acknowledges that it might be challenging for her to perfectly match his mother's preferences, but she's determined to give it her best effort. She asks for insights into his mother's personality and style because it will guide her choice of attire. Does his mother prefer a more reserved, understated look, or should she go for a more glamorous appearance since it's her birthday? Surprisingly, Ehan responds by saying that all she needs to do is show up, and that's the most important thing to his family. However, if he had to choose, he'd lean toward a more reserved style rather than a flashy one for his mother. Haen isn't finished. She's also interested in his preferences because even though this is a pretend relationship, understanding each other better is essential. He's taken aback, as he never expected her to be so thorough. She pushes him to share something about himself, what he likes and dislikes, or what she should keep in mind or avoid doing. He hesitates and suggests that he feels she probably has more to share with him. He asks if she has something special to share, but she quickly diverts the conversation, mentioning that the patient must be ready. Since he didn't reveal much, she'll base her outfit choice on what his mother likes. Before parting, he picks a leaf from her clothing and advises her to check herself for any stray items. On the day of the chairman's mother's birthday, he sits with his parents among other guests, who are engaged in hushed conversations and murmurs about him. The whispers and side discussions are so loud that he can clearly hear them. His mother tries to console him, suggesting that he shouldn't pay them any mind. He turns to her and mentions that it seems like they bother her more than they do him. She admits that she had high hopes because he arrived early and didn't expect him to come alone this year. He chides her for potentially spreading the word that he was bringing someone, but she denies having told anyone anything. In response, he decides to give her some space, believing that she might be embarrassed by him. He walks away from the crowd. Mr. Kong approaches the chairman and mentions that the chairman's mother has already asked him several times if her son truly didn't bring anyone. The chairman responds that his mother seems reluctant to believe him. They notice the chairman's mother engaged in conversation with someone. Mr. Kong informs him that she's talking to the wife of the Taegang group owner, whose son recently got married, so the lady accompanying her must be her daughter-in-law. While stylishly awaiting Hagen's arrival, he asks Mr. Kong for the time, and it's 7:25 p.m. He offers to call the hospital, but the chairman trusts that Haen will arrive. After a while, he spots her coming from a distance. Ehan descends to meet Haen, and his mother quickly approaches them upon seeing them together. He swiftly introduces them, and Haen thanks the chairman's mom for the invitation. However, his mother finds it hard to believe that this is truly his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Haen believes she's playing her part well, and she apologizes for keeping the chairman waiting. His mother becomes emotional at the sight of them holding hands, deeply touched. As they settle in, he inquires if this is why she asked about his and his mother's preferences. Haen mentions that he had told her his mother preferred a more reserved image, so she did her best to match that. She also asks if he's content with her appearance, explaining that she put in the effort because it benefits them both, helping maintain his image. He brushes off her explanation and asks if she's this diligent in everything she does. She confirms that she's always diligent because money doesn't fall from the sky. She admits her mistake with the patient but underscores that she's never been frivolous with other people's money. When she starts something, she takes full responsibility for it. Ehan wonders when she had time to prepare. She mentions that she's been managing affairs for 13 professors and 5 division heads for 5 years. She's attended countless events, from welcome parties to retirement ceremonies and birthdays, and the hospital provides everything needed for such occasions. She even dubs herself the Queen of Events and offers her services for anything in the future, from birthdays to funerals and sporting events. She playfully showcases her customer service smile and claims she's willing to attend anything and everything if it helps her reduce her debt before the committee holds a meeting for additional budget allocations. She mentions that she could have done better today, but she's been stuck in operating rooms all day. Ehan is surprised and asks when she eats. She replies that she doesn't eat, which alarms him further. He questions if she hasn't eaten all day and why she's still drinking without having eaten. She reassures him not to worry. She doesn't act out when she drinks since her alcohol tolerance is high. Haen apologizes for the day she tried to repay him 2 million won out of the money, explaining that she doesn't usually shout like that. She admits she didn't intend to throw the envelope at him, it was supposed to be placed gently on the table. She apologizes again, saying that sometimes things don't go as planned, and Ehan agrees, noting that sometimes life takes unexpected turns. He excuses himself for a moment, believing she'll understand, and walks away. Haen is concerned that his mother might approach her with questions if he leaves. However, Ehan is confident that she's always prepared for anything. While standing alone and having her drink, the chairman's mother approaches her and introduces herself again. Haen turns around and responds to her introduction. Ehan's mother warmly expresses her gratitude to Haen once more for her presence, and Haen reciprocates by wishing her a happy birthday. His mother shares her initial disbelief that her son actually brought his girlfriend along and still finds it hard to believe. Haen apologizes for not having prepared a gift, but his mother graciously accepts, stating that it's something she should have arranged. However, as Haen continues to speak, The woman abruptly interrupts her because Haen calls Chairman Seo by his first name, Ehan. His mother finds it endearing when she addresses her son as Ehan instead of Mr. Seo. Sniffling, she apologizes again and admits she doesn't understand why she's reacting this way, revealing that she never anticipated a day like this after giving birth to the chairman. She goes on to explain to Haen that her son didn't move much in her stomach during pregnancy, making her think it was going to be a girl. However, she acknowledges that this is just how he is. She also mentions that her son rarely talks to her, and she didn't expect much for her birthday. Still, she'd never received a gift like this before. She expresses regret for not giving Haen a proper greeting earlier due to the large number of people around. Then, she reaches for Hagen's hand and suggests they find a quieter place to continue their conversation. Ehan re-enters the scene and questions Hagen's ability to follow his mother anywhere. He reminds his mother that she initially stated she only wanted to see Haen. However, he concedes that since she's made the journey, she might as well join them for a meal. The chairman states that situations can change, suggesting that she should refer to him as Ehan instead of Mr. Seo, given the informal setting. Haen expresses gratitude and emphasizes that she never expected anything like this. Ehan, in a somewhat self-deprecating manner, remarks that he wonders what kind of employer she thought he would be, indicating he's not as bad as she might have imagined. He offers to escort her inside for a more comfortable dining experience, but she declines, explaining that she typically doesn't eat while sitting for extended periods. Standing in the operating room all day makes her legs restless when she sits too long, so she prefers to eat quickly to prepare for the next surgery. Ehan questions whether this means she only takes quick bites of food in the operating room, to which she responds by mentioning that she makes sure to visit the cafeteria when they serve pork cutlets. He gently reminds her that this isn't the operating room, so she need not rush. Haen internally reflects that if her boss provides her with food, perhaps it won't be so bad after all. However, she quickly recalls her conversations with Oreo and Juno, both of whom expressed their feelings for her but were rejected. She admits she had contemplated dating one of them once things settled down a bit, unaware that someone else had already set their sights on her, the chairman, who is referred to as a wolf in her thoughts. Haen informs Ehan that she has carefully laid out a schedule for both of them. Confused, he inquires about the specific schedule she is referencing while harboring curiosity about her intentions. She then discloses that she intends to secure 10 million won for the day, leaving them with a remaining balance of 66 million won. Consequently, this implies that they must meet at least 6 more times to fulfill their financial arrangement. Furthermore, she outlines that for the initial 3 meetings, they should front a keen interest in each other's company, but beginning with the 4th encounter, they should let the strain in their relationship manifest, owing to their clashing personalities. In response to her strategic approach, he commends her thoroughness, a quality he hadn't fully appreciated before. Intrigued, he asks her about what his mother might have disclosed to her. He expresses his certainty that she must have observed that his mother always operates with a hidden agenda, suggesting that she need not hold back in dealing with his mother. This prompts him to embark on a narrative about his mother, prompting Haen to exclaim, asking if she genuinely gave birth to him. This abrupt outburst startles him, and she quickly issues an apology, clarifying that she didn't intend to be rude but merely sought to disregard any lingering rumors. Surprisingly, he responds by assuring her not to apologize, revealing that even he occasionally finds it difficult to believe she is his biological mother. They both clink their glasses, acknowledging the flavor of their drinks. Suddenly, Mr. Kong enters the scene, and the chairman wastes no time in querying whether his mother desires to learn more about Haen or wishes to make arrangements to meet her again. Mr. Kong confirms that his mother is interested in both aspects and even suggests that she might invite them to the opening of Seo Moon Gallery's new annex next week. The chairman promptly accepts the invitation and further inquires if his mother had inquired about Hagen's hospital schedule. He points out that his mother tends to exaggerate her ailments depending on the doctor's specialty. The chairman suggests that it might be more advantageous for the doctor to meet his mother in her capacity as the gallery owner, rather than as a patient. Turning to Haen, the chairman anticipates her agreement, which she readily provides, believing that she has found a kindred spirit outside the confines of the operating room. Raising her glass, she extends a friendly gesture to the secretary and asks if she can address him as Mr. Kong. As the conversation continues, Haen converses with the chairman's secretary while he stands by, pondering the unusual smile she now wears. She offers an apology to Mr. Kong for missing her fitting reservations earlier due to a surgery that overlapped with her schedule. Mr. Kong acknowledges her busy schedule as a doctor but requests that she inform him in advance if such conflicts arise in the future, so he can make necessary adjustments. The chairman, still lost in thought, ponders why his secretary appears to have so much information about his supposed girlfriend. He realizes that he is the only one aware of their arrangement and believes it's best for them to maintain a casual relationship. As Hyen asks the secretary for his phone number, the chairman decides it's an opportune moment to intervene. He comments on the champagne's bitterness and asks Mr. Kong to fetch a new bottle from the wine cellar. Although Hyen finds the champagne sweet, the chairman insists it's due to her limited knowledge of it. Without warning, he takes her phone, inputs his number, and hands it back to her, suggesting that she call him for any information she may need. The date wraps up, and Hyen finds herself back home, sitting alone. As she reflects on the moments from her time with Chairman Seo Ehan, she can't help but think that they've just started this journey together. She's also aware that she needs to come up with a strategy for dealing with her demanding employer. Meanwhile, at Ehan's place, he carefully goes through Hyen's resume and notices that she graduated at the top of her class from Hankook University. He comments that she's supposed to be smart, but in his opinion, she falls short, suggesting that maybe the standards at Hankook University aren't what they used to be. The next day, Hyen arrives at the hospital with a cheerful demeanor, and a colleague approaches her, asking if she's just gotten there. She confirms that she has and, filled with curiosity, asks if something exciting has happened. Playfully, he encourages her to take a guess about the nature of the news. After a few unsuccessful attempts at guessing, he hints at her empty stomach and suggests she grab some breakfast. Still curious, Hyen presses him to spill the beans about the good news, asking if it's even more exciting than a successful surgery. He responds with a smile, hinting that it's pretty close. Meanwhile, at the hospital's reception, the phone rings, and the receptionist is informed about the cafeteria's special offering of pork cutlets for the day. She assures the caller that she'll make her way there quickly, stressing the urgency because Chairman Seo Ehan will be leaving soon. Ehan emerges from his office, getting ready to leave, and the receptionist kindly offers to arrange a car for his return after lunch. In response, he playfully mentions an unexplored spot within the hospital that he plans to visit since he's working there now, a sly smirk on his face. In the bustling cafeteria, filled with hushed conversations and lively chatter, Hyen stands with two of her colleagues. Tension lingers as it becomes apparent that her colleagues are in a heated dispute, seemingly involving Hyen. However, amidst the chaos, there's an air of excitement as the cafeteria celebrates Pork Cutlet Day. Hyen seizes the opportunity to ask Mingguk if there was a recent case involving a congenital heart defect. Mingguk, in a positive tone, confirms such a case involving a 60-day-old female infant with an 8mm hole. Moreover, he mentions that the procedure went smoothly, even though Dr. Oh left after the initial phase, leaving him to handle a significant part of the surgery. Mingguk expresses newfound confidence in his abilities, and both he and Hyen feel a sense of pride. As they select their meals and head to their seats, they encounter Dr. Choi. Hyen reassures her colleagues, emphasizing that they've done nothing wrong. They continue to their seats, and Hyen asks about the patient who had surgery the previous day. While enjoying their meal, Juno joins them and playfully teases Hyen about her enthusiastic consumption of pork cutlets, likening it to a surgical procedure. Hyen warns Juno to stop teasing and join them at the table. Juno declines, searching departmental do cheese. Observing her colleagues devour their pork cutlets, Juno jokingly suggests that cardiothoracic surgery is intimidating. Hyen and others try to persuade him of the meal's quality, steering the conversation toward culinary delights and the hospital in general. Suddenly, someone indirectly alludes to Hyen's earlier point about exceptional food in unexpected settings. Juno apologizes for bringing it up, but Hyen seizes the moment to advocate for open-mindedness. She praises the quality of the meal, suggesting that such exquisite food should be served beyond the hospital cafeteria. Juno, in a playful manner, insists on ordering steak instead. Hyen counters, emphasizing the joy of relishing exceptional food in unexpected places. Her words resonate through the cafeteria, momentarily quieting the background chatter. An anonymous voice chimes in, giving examples of scenarios like a buffet at an internet cafe or a 5-course meal at a modest diner. Hyen, momentarily puzzled by the sudden silence, looks up and discovers the reason: the hospital's chairman, an unexpected presence in the employee cafeteria, illustrating the essence of her earlier statement. Ehan sits in his office, deep in thought, reminiscing about the moment when he told Hyen to contact him. Just as he's about to leave his office to meet her, he unexpectedly overhears her actively discussing the topic of pork cutlets. This is how he became aware of this intriguing topic today, and curiosity seems to have spread throughout the cafeteria, leaving everyone puzzled about the chairman's presence there. But that's not all. The chairman takes a seat at Dr. Choi's table, conveniently located near Hyen's table. He calmly dismisses the receptionist, claiming he can manage his afternoon schedule on his own. Dr. Choi, sitting beside him, sees this as a rare honor to share a meal with the chairman and, perhaps, an opportunity as well. He secretly hopes that Hyen won't interfere with her heart transplant center affairs, even though she appears unusually silent today. Dr. Choi can't help but feel that Hyen is a perpetual source of trouble, yet she continues to exude confidence, making him wonder why the chairman is so fixated on her. Finally breaking the silence, Dr. Choi starts to inquire if the chairman is enjoying his meal. In response, Ehan praises the food, declaring it so good that it almost makes one forget their duties. This encourages Dr. Choi to continue his meal with a sense of relief, hoping he isn't causing any disturbance. Seizing the opportunity, Dr. Choi shares with the chairman his desire to visit his office for a conversation. He acknowledges that their initial meeting didn't end on the best note and feels they failed to adequately represent their department's true nature. He asserts that despite the occasional chaos, their department usually operates smoothly, with everyone adhering to jail hospital standards. Ehan expresses his previous concern about Dr. Choi, pointing out that he appears to lag behind his peers, evident from the statistics within his department. Moreover, he was worried that the doctor might be dealing with an undisclosed ailment, though he appears to be in good health and understanding. Before Dr. Choi can respond, the chairman interrupts, expressing relief that he isn't the supposed, very special person he had in mind. After conveying his thoughts, Chairman Co Ehan encourages Dr. Choi to finish his meal before it gets cold, remarking that the food exceeded his expectations. Dr. Choi reveals that he had been contemplating scheduling a meeting with the chairman to discuss various ideas. The chairman promptly invites him to reach out whenever he has something to discuss. He emphasizes that Dr. Choi should feel free to contact him, whether it's about future plans or even the smallest of inquiries. Regrettably, Dr. Choi admits he doesn't have the chairman's contact information. Ehan then says that only those with his number should call him, a subtle hint for Hyen to reach out, as his comment is intentionally loud enough for her to hear. With that, Ehan departs. In the next scene, Ehan has gone to meet with Hyen, passing through the garden area and the back door. He's beginning to think that she enjoys these kinds of places. As he strolls, lost in his thoughts, she rushes up and grabs him, urgently instructing him to enter quickly before someone spots him. However, he appears unbothered by the potential consequences because this is his hospital, and there's nowhere he can't go. Hyen remarks that she's confident it won't have any repercussions for him if they're caught. On the contrary, she expresses her hope to remain at the hospital for an extended period, reminding him of his promise to keep their relationship a secret from everyone here. This leads her to question his decision to come to the cafeteria in such a manner, to which he counters by asking if that was the sole reason for their meeting. Nevertheless, she clarifies that she just wanted to emphasize that she's not planning to run away from her responsibilities and will repay her debt, urging him not to make surprise visits like this again. Moreover, he has observed previously how diligently she worked the other night, prompting him to inquire why she didn't speak up earlier if she always works so diligently. He then proceeds to ask her about Dr. Choi's apparent opposition toward her. She responds by explaining that Dr. Choi has always been like that, and there's nothing she can do to change his opinion. She adds that there's nothing she could say that would alter his perspective, so it's better to refrain from trying. She reveals her belief that Dr. Choi's behavior stems from the chairman's presumed disapproval of their department due to her involvement. Consequently, she questions the chairman about his bad mood, wondering why he would waste his time and energy in such a state. As he contemplates whether his recent edginess is due to her failure to call or her inability to speak in front of Dr. Choi, he realizes that it's definitely because of her. However, he chooses to conceal his irritation, claiming he was never angry, and asks her why she intended to call him. In response, she explains that it pertains to their upcoming plans. She expresses concern that since their next date is at a gallery owned by his mother, and Mr. Kong mentioned there will be fewer guests, the chairman's mother will likely ask her more questions. She inquires about what she should say if people inquire about how they met. Instead of providing a response, the chairman furrows his brow in thought. Thus, she knew that he'd react this way and proceeded to offer two versions of the story, a simple one and a more clandestine one, asking for his preference. However, it becomes evident that the chairman may not have a choice in the matter, so she opts for the straightforward version. Out of curiosity, he asks her about the clandestine version, and she begins explaining that on his first day at the hospital, he saw her and couldn't take his eyes off her. She suggests that he was so captivated by her presence that it began affecting his work, and he was willing to do anything to win her over. He interrupts her, in disbelief, and questions whether she truly believes he would act in such a manner because of her. Back at the cafeteria, Hyen's colleagues begin to wonder where she's gone, especially since she didn't finish her pork cutlets. They've noticed she's been acting a bit strangely lately, often lost in her thoughts. They speculate that the recent incident with the runaway patient might still be on her mind, though they note that such matters have never affected her this profoundly, given her typically strong disposition. Returning to the conversation between Ehan and Haen, he inquires if she believes her actions influenced his recent behavior, but she clarifies that it was just an example she had in mind. He ponders whether this is the reason for her recent lack of communication. She explains that she has been contemplating how to align her actions with the chairman's preferences and demonstrate her trustworthiness. She also expresses her intention to prove the worth of CS once she has settled her debt. In the midst of their conversation, she reaches into her pocket and hands him a copy of their contract. However, he defers examining it until later. Ehan mentions his upcoming afternoon commitments and expresses his desire to leave, but she persuades him to stay a moment longer. She reminds him that there remains a balance of 66 million won after deducting 10 million won for his mother's birthday, and she requires his signature to proceed. Despite her plea, he promptly departs before any further action can be taken. Upon returning home, Ehan reviews the contract and concludes that while it may appear decent at first glance, it necessitates substantial revisions. He's relieved that he didn't have to review it on the spot and mock her, but he finds the situation intriguing. His phone rings suddenly, and it's Mr. Kong, his secretary, calling to inform him that he will be accompanying the chairman to the gallery. Ehan initially dismisses the need for such an arrangement, but Mr. Kong explains that he has heard rumors of the chairman's aunt flying in from the US to attend the event. He inquires whether it would be suitable for both Ehan's mother and aunt to be present, to which Ehan assures him that it will be fine. Apparently, Ehan's aunt has had 3 marriages and numerous romantic scandals, and she persists in pressuring him to get married. Mr. Kong suspects that the aunt's primary motive for attending is to meet Haen, which could pose a challenge for the doctor. Consequently, he offers to accompany them to the event. The chairman instructs him to make sure their outfits are prepared for the day. Mr. Kong senses a distinct chilliness in the chairman's demeanor and reflects that he hasn't felt this way since the day they first met. Ehan's aunt has never been one to simply let things be. She possesses a keen instinct, which, at times, can be quite bothersome. She has earned herself the reputation of a marriage of convenience finder. There was a time when she bombarded him with an endless stream of blind dates, firmly believing that everyone has a soulmate out there. As they arrive at their destination, they spot Haen, who has already made her presence known with a beaming smile. Ehan quickly recalls a conversation they had when she mentioned her thoroughness and even sought his opinion on what outfit to wear. They finally reach their destination, and Ehan turns to his secretary to inquire if today's event will resemble the last one. Mr. Kong explains that while many employees from the company attended his mother's birthday celebration, today's event is more of an intimate gathering with close acquaintances. The secretary assures him that there will be individuals from his mother's social circle and their children present. He wonders if Haen will be comfortable, to which she responds that she will be just fine. As she spots him arriving, she mentions that she has just arrived herself and greeted a few people, although no one has delved into any personal details yet. She expresses relief, as she had been somewhat apprehensive about experiencing the kind of drama she often sees on TV. When he inquires about the nature of these dramas, she explains that in them, people at chaebol parties often dig into each other's backgrounds and question why certain individuals are even present. Surprised, he asks her about the dramas she's been watching, and she clarifies that she's not the viewer but knows someone who is. She goes on to reveal that everyone has been quite welcoming since her arrival. He extends his hand to her and mentions that the reason people are treating her kindly is because of her association with him. He then proceeds to inform her about one person she should be cautious of, his younger brother, Yuhan. Haen admits she can't recall his face since she only saw him once during his hospital visit. Ehan suggests that it's perhaps better that way. Slightly bothered, she urges him to explain what his brother is like, but he interrupts her, saying that she'll find out when she meets him. He emphasizes that getting close to his brother will only lead to trouble, and if she encounters him, she should avoid engaging with him. He advises her not to respond to any of his brother's questions and to refrain from smiling at him. Haen agrees to limit her interactions with Ehan as much as possible. She expresses her wish that Ehan should have been more upfront with her from the beginning, as her anxiety grew, and she meticulously planned everything, envisioning it like a scene from a romantic drama. Little did she anticipate that it would proceed so seamlessly. Ehan holds hope that the situation continues this way, emphasizing the unpredictability of life. He assures her that she will soon discover the truth. He also advises her that his mother will be arriving shortly and cautions her not to overdo it. In response, she seeks guidance on how to gauge if she is indeed going overboard. He then offers a simple solution, to mimic the actions of their previous date, assuring her that things will go smoothly. As his mother enters, accompanied by another lady, Haen inquires about the lady's identity, remarking on their striking resemblance. He responds, asserting that the lady is precisely the type of person she had been anticipating. Although he admits to not having watched the dramas she mentioned, he is confident that this lady meets her expectations. He leans closer and asks if she would appreciate a special treat today. Meanwhile, his aunt confides in his mother, suggesting that Ehan may be concealing the truth and that she truly doesn't know her son. His mother recalls that he did introduce Haen to her at her birthday party, which initially quells her doubts. His aunt, however, remains convinced that Ehan was vigilantly monitoring the situation, ready to intervene should the need arise, to avoid any falsehoods. His mother queries why she speaks ill of her own son, to which the aunt responds by recounting Ehan's past behavior, noting his harshness whenever she introduced him to someone. She assures his mother that she, with her extensive experience of walking down the aisle 3 times, will be able to discern the truth when she meets both Ehan and Haen. His mother, anxious to avoid hasty decisions, implores the aunt to scrutinize the couple closely so that she can gauge the seriousness of their relationship before making any future plans. When Ehan's mother and aunt approach them, his aunt notices something different about him and says, "This isn't the Ehan she used to know." Ehan greets his aunt warmly and tells her that he's glad to see that she's the same as ever. She stares at him deeply, and despite his occasional annoying tendencies, she can't deny the fact that he's handsome. So Haen introduces herself to his aunt. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Juno informs Oreo that Haen has already left because she says she has plans for today. Oreo tries to inquire who she's meeting, but Juno tells him to worry about himself since he has a class trio today, thinking to himself, this isn't something they should just gloss over. Back at the gallery, Ehan's aunt introduces herself, and Haen says she has heard a lot about her. She tells his aunt that she sees a striking resemblance between her and Ehan. Aunt Hyen, gazing at them, thinks inwardly that her nephew managed to find a good one. She asks Haen how they met, thinking it might startle her. Haen explains that the chairman visited the hospital as a patient one day, and they ended up exchanging phone numbers while discussing something. From there, things progressed further. His aunt asks why he chose to visit Seomun Jail Hospital out of all the hospitals and inquires about Hagen's department in the hospital. When she replies that she's a cardiothoracic surgeon, Aunt Hyen thinks she has finally caught her in a lie. But Haen immediately adds that he was there for his mom. According to her, he said his mother was suffering from heart arrhythmia, and her family had a history of it. So he always worried so much about his mother that he'd call her several times to ask about her. We learn that Haen based her facts on the way his mom grasps at her heart, quite often struggles with palpitations, and has trouble breathing. Aunt Hyen is surprised by all she just heard. She never thought her nephew cared so much about his mom. She applauds Haen, telling her that she's impressive while hoping that Ehan isn't boring her since she knows he isn't that affectionate. Haen tries defending him, saying that he may be a man of few words, but he immediately completes her statement before his aunt notices that she has no idea how to finish it. He wraps his hand around his supposed girlfriend while calming her down, saying he's sure they wouldn't mind a bit of PDA. Nonetheless, his aunt is still not entirely convinced. Haen heads to the restroom, her thoughts consumed by the bonus offer Ehan gave her. She's elated, and her cheeks flush with happiness. She can't help but admire how observant Aunt Hyen is, almost like the female version of Ehan himself. She silently applauds herself for handling the curveball thrown her way. While pondering Ehan's aunt, she vividly recalls the moment he wrapped his arm around her. With confidence, she pats her shoulder, reassuring herself not to be fazed by such gestures. After all, there's still a long way to go until the contract is completed. As she exits the bathroom, she encounters a lady who greets her. Meanwhile, Aunt Hyen confronts Ehan about the act he's putting on, but he insists that he and Haen are genuinely dating. She mentions hearing about the bet between him and his mom, questioning whether it's worth all the trouble. He denies knowledge of what she's talking about. She reminds him that they're doing everything for his sake, despite how he may perceive it. She emphasizes her role as his mother's only sister and raises concerns about his distant behavior towards her, suggesting he may need her assistance one day. She then asks why he's not expecting Haen to be present like a princess. He argues that she's a grown adult and can handle herself. However, he wonders why she's taking so long. His aunt mentions the room being filled with people living off his family's wealth, possibly explaining his nonchalant attitude. She also alludes to people who neither depend on his family's money nor particularly like him, hinting at potential issues with Haen. Ehan curiously asks why they would target her, and she returns the question, questioning why he has so many enemies. He contemplates this briefly before rushing off in search of Haen. Back at the hospital, Hagen's colleagues speculate about her whereabouts, glad she's taking some time off. While they argue, Dr. Kim Juno enters and inquires if anything is amiss with Haen. They downplay the situation, claiming nothing happened. However, they remark on her dressing up and mistakenly assume she might be attending a hospital event with Juno, which turns out to be incorrect. Juno wonders where she could have gone to spark such rumors. The lady Haen encounters recognizes her from before and greets her. She mentions hearing about Hagen's relationship with Mr. Seo and introduces herself as Ju Haen of Juhan Bank. Other people start approaching Haen, and the atmosphere becomes tense as they bombard her with multiple questions in an attempt to unsettle her. However, Haen remains remarkably composed. She explains that her parents run a small store outside Seoul, a fact she has no intention of hiding. They imply that people tend to stick to their own social circles in such places. One girl even mentions Ehan's calculated nature. This conversation stirs memories for Haen. Growing increasingly irritated, Haen observes that these girls have pretty faces but are spewing ugly words. Suddenly, Yuhan arrives, initially believing art galleries are for selling art, but he realizes they can also be places for healing hearts. One girl informs Yuhan that he's misunderstood. She explains they've known each other since childhood, and she was only asking Haen because she didn't recognize her. Yuhan asks if she's unaware that speaking like that in a Seo Moon gallery implies having more money than others. As they converse, Haen recalls Ehan's advice to avoid his brother, recognizing the attributes he mentioned. They shake hands and introduce themselves. Ju Haen suggests Ehan is immature, but Hagen's response implies that she doesn't appreciate their behavior. She emphasizes that mentioning her workplace isn't about family status but confidence in her abilities. Annoyed, Haen raises her glasses to strike Haen, but they fall to the ground. In a surprising turn of events, Yuhan heroically throws himself in to shield Haen from the flying glass, cutting his hand in the process. The room instantly buzzes with whispers and chatter as people try to make sense of what just happened. Without missing a beat, Dr. Yoon Haen swiftly instructs the girls to call for an ambulance. Just then, Seo Ehan barrels into the room, mistakenly thinking his brother is trying to stage a spectacle in front of the guests. Yuhan becomes visibly emotional as he pleads with his brother, assuring him that he didn't intentionally cause any trouble. Meanwhile, Haen calmly attends to Yuhan, doing his best to stabilize him while they wait for help to arrive. Haen gently gets Yuhan to lie down and instructs him to move his fingers. Ehan calls out to him, hesitating for a moment before asking her what he can do to help. He reaches out and gently removes his tie, intending to use it as a makeshift tourniquet. With a calming voice, he instructs Yuhan to hold his hand up high. Before long, the wailing sirens of the ambulance fill the air. As the EMTs rush in, Haen takes charge, guiding them on what needs to be done. All the while, Ehan's mother and Aunt Hyen look on, shocked and worried. In the midst of the chaos, Ehan's mother turns to Hyen, asking for a handkerchief just like she gave Haen. But Hyen remains silent, leaving Ehan's mother surprised. She questions Hyen, wondering if she's rattled by the incident, contrary to her usually cool demeanor. Hyen dismisses her, stating that she's not easily affected. She then poses a hypothetical question about Ehan and Haen being together. Ehan's mother, a little taken aback, asks if Hyen doesn't trust the boys. She confidently expresses her belief in Ehan and Haen, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Hyen simply tells the mother that it's okay for her to hold on to hope and walks away, leaving them with a cryptic statement hinting that she might have misjudged the situation. As Haen heads towards the ambulance, she reassures Yuhan, promising him he'll be alright. With his uninjured hand, Yuhan gently grabs her sleeve, expressing a genuine wish to get to know her better. He begins to invite her to share a meal with him post-stitches, but Ehan quickly intervenes. In a heated tone, he challenges Yuhan to finish his sentence, then firmly instructs him to let go of Haen. Yuhan, taken aback by Ehan's sudden appearance, hesitates as Ehan continues to glower at him. Eventually, he releases Haen, announcing his departure. Ehan retorts, suggesting he makes himself scarce, while Haen looks on, puzzled by his brother's reaction. Following this, the EMTs whisk Yuhan away. Haen starts to leave too, but pauses when Ehan calls out to her. She turns around and reassures Ehan not to worry. Ehan, however, replies that he'll worry if he chooses to. Misunderstanding his concern, Haen assumes Ehan is troubled about his younger brother's injury. Still, Ehan quickly clarifies that his worry isn't for Yuhan, leaving Haen wondering if Ehan wasn't upset about his brother's mishap. Haen then begins to apologize for the earlier commotion, explaining that she didn't mean to stir up drama and had tried to ignore the girls. Still, Ehan interrupts her, assuring her that she has nothing to apologize for. Ehan gently reminds Haen that she's not just a guest at this gathering but his partner. A wave of relief washes over her. He isn't upset. He encourages her to tread more carefully, and she nods, mentally noting the pending invoice that needs his signature. She expresses her relief that his brother's injury wasn't severe and empathizes with the scare his mother must have had. As Ehan's gaze drifts toward his mother, who's in conversation with his aunt, he shares a family philosophy with Haen: if it's not right in front of them, it doesn't exist. This makes her ponder, could it be that this family has no hidden secrets? She excuses herself, intending to freshen up, but Ehan catches her hand, halting her. How can he let her wander off alone again after what happened? Haen assures him she isn't stirring trouble, only making it harder for him to release her. He fusses with her sleeve, silence enveloping them. She looks at him, holding on to the hand he just let go. They both break the silence simultaneously, but Haen gives Ehan the floor. He apologizes for the earlier incident, recalling Aunt Hyen's concern about how the disgruntled guests might treat Haen. He admits he underestimated the situation and promises to keep a tighter leash next time if only she would share what the ladies said to her. To his surprise, Haen shrugs it off, saying she's fine. He questions her, puzzled. How could she be okay with it? She laughs, asking him if he truly believes she's upset. She explains she's unaffected because she's not in love with him. Whispering in his ear, she tells him only a woman in love would be bothered by such petty squabbles. Ehan's fist clenches, a sense of disappointment seeping in. No one has ever spoken to him quite like this before. Ehan replays Hagen's words in his mind, each repetition irritating him further. Haen attempts to continue the conversation, but he stops her midway, assuring her he gets it. His glare is icy as it meets hers. He suggests they head back indoors, but Haen interjects, inquiring about her deserved bonus. The question brings him to a standstill, and he regards her curiously, likening her to a determined seal. She reminds him of his promise, a handsome bonus of 10 million won if she successfully navigated his aunt's event. Nonchalantly, he confirms that she'll receive it. Gratitude washes over her, she trusts his word. Yet, she can't shake off the feeling that he seems annoyed. Curiously, she asks him if it's about the tie. Despite his denial, she insists she will cover the cost. As she begins to retreat, she declares her willingness to pay for the tie, seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen their business ties using her bonus money. She throws a casual question over her shoulder, wondering aloud about the cost of the tie. His reply, 10 million won, leaves her stunned. She whirls around to face him, accusing him of joking, but his response is stern, he never jokes about money. With that, he strides away, leaving her with the revelation that her bonus will neatly cover the expensive tie. Later that night, Ehan stands under the cascading water in his apartment shower, lost in thought. Hagen's words echo in his mind, her declaration of not being in love with him. He can't help but wonder, does she not even like him? The next day, Haen is in her own world, oblivious to the world around her. Dr. Kim Juno's voice barely registers in her mind, only breaking through when he raises his voice. He quizzes her about her unusual behavior and lack of appetite. She glances at the food before her, but the thought of eating feels redundant, she's already filled to the brim with debts. Juno slides into a seat next to one of their colleagues across from Haen and teases her about possibly having another patient on the lam. Haen, in turn, throws him a curveball question, is he a man? His playful response hints at her finally acknowledging him as such. He tries to add more quips to lighten the mood, but Haen interrupts him, asking him if it's possible for a tie to cost 10 million won. This question confuses Juno. She elaborates, her voice gaining volume with each word. As a man, he must buy ties, right? How could a tie cost a whopping 10 million won? Juno, taken aback by the sudden outburst, asks why she's yelling. In reply, she demands an answer to her question. He confesses that he's clueless, admitting that he sometimes still wears elastic ties. He can't fathom how a tie could be so pricey, even if it were encrusted with jewels. Hearing this, Hyen's spirits lift momentarily. But they plummet again when Juno adds that he supposes such ludicrously priced ties might exist in the world of chaebol. This revelation triggers tears, leaving Juno flustered. He quickly guides her away from prying eyes in the cafeteria while their colleague left behind speculates about what could have caused such an emotional outburst from Hyen. As they make their way out of the cafeteria, they bump into Chansung and his group of interns. Chansung saunters over to Hyen, casually inquiring if she just had lunch. She affirms while Juno grumbles under his breath about his apparent invisibility. Chansung brushes past Juno's comment, asking Hyen about her upcoming surgery. This obvious dismissal irks Juno further. Hyen attempts to respond, but Chansung interjects, advising her to delegate more tasks to her interns. Without missing a beat, he pivots towards his own group of interns, introducing them to Hyen as old schoolmates. The interns greet her warmly, and she reciprocates despite Juno's simmering annoyance. Chansung then extends an invitation for lunch to Hyen, but she graciously declines, assuring him she's fine. He probes her refusal, jokingly questioning if she still thinks he harbors feelings for her. He then laughs it off, denying any lingering emotions. As she begins to reiterate her refusal, he cuts her off, explaining that his interns are eager to hear about their med school days. He adds, "Aren't they friends?" Juno rolls his eyes internally at this, thinking, here we go again. Chansung insists that, as friends, they should share a meal and reminisce about their internship days. Hyen politely declines, citing her busy schedule. Undeterred, Chansung assures her he won't misconstrue their lunch as anything more. Hyen playfully retorts that she might misinterpret it, excusing herself from the conversation. Juno trails after her, grumbling about Chansung's unchanging ways and labeling him a jerk, which earns them a glare from Chansung. Juno vents his disbelief that Chansung is still pursuing Hyen despite her repeated rejections. He suspects that Chansung joined jail hospital solely because of her. He recalls how Hyen once expressed her desire to remain friends with Chansung, and now he uses the friendship card at every opportunity. Juno also mentions hearing that Chansung is quite wealthy. To this, Hyen quips that his bank balance must certainly exceed 78 million won. Juno, while empathizing with her predicament, can't help but ask if she's still preoccupied with the topic. Juno then escorts Hyen into a vacant room, offering her a seat. He suggests that she could always seek donations from Hankook University Hospital. In response, she playfully retorts that he might as well set up a donation tin next to her sleeping bag when she's homeless. Juno hands her a lollipop in her favorite flavor, trying to coax out what's really troubling her. He's confident it isn't just about the money. However, Hyen remains silent, haunted by Ehan's pained expression from the night before, wondering if she could have hurt him. Juno urges her to open up, hoping to lend a helping hand. However, she skillfully changes the subject, citing a patient waiting for her as she stands. Juno teases her about seeming like the only one working in her department, but she counters that she only has outpatient appointments lined up. Stretching, she declares her intention to earn more and pay off her debt. As she makes to leave, Juno recalls something he wanted to share with her. Hyen, in jest, tells him to save it unless it's about money. He confirms that it is and informs her about a new VIP ward in the works. At that same moment, we find Ehan gazing out his office window, lost in thought over Hyen's words. He understands her stance on not mixing business with pleasure, yet he can't decipher his own feelings. The planning director presents him with the ward plans, sharing his opinion about assigning fellows instead of residents to act like family doctors. Ehan replies with biting sarcasm, highlighting the unrealistic expectations of making overworked people cater to VIP patients. The man stammers, clarifying that he intended the fellows to be compensated for their additional work, but doubts many would willingly take on such a load for little extra pay. Ehan's mind immediately drifts to Haen, though he keeps his thoughts to himself. Before leaving, the man assures Ehan that he'll iron out the details to align them with other hospitals. He pops back in after a few moments, letting Ehan know about a guest waiting for him. At the mention of a guest, Ehan's interest is piqued. Then, Yuhan walks in. Earlier, the planning director had exited Ehan's office, his mind churning with thoughts. He'd been trying to curry favor with Chairman Seo Ehan, but so far, his attempts had been less than successful. His initiative to create an indoor garden, inspired by Ehan's mother's love for flowers, hadn't drawn as much as a single visit from Ehan. Just when he was losing hope, he spotted Yuhan waiting outside. A bright idea sparked in his mind, surely Ehan would be pleased to see his only brother. He couldn't help but view this as a golden opportunity. However, reality didn't quite align with his expectations. Upon entering, Yuhan is greeted not with a warm smile, but a cold glare from Ehan. Ehan reminds him, none too gently, that he'd sworn to cut ties if Yuhan dared approach him or his office again. Seeing his golden opportunity crumble, the man feels a pang of disappointment. Ehan, maintaining his professional demeanor, firmly instructs Yuhan to vacate his office. He's met with Yuhan's protest as he presents his injured hand, pleading his case as a patient in need. But Ehan remains resolute, reiterating his request for his brother to leave. However, Yuhan isn't backing down as he shares his near-death experience from the night of his injury and how he's only just regained use of his hand. He questions Ehan's apparent lack of hospitality towards his only sibling. Ehan, however, deflects with a dash of sarcasm, quizzing Yuhan on his understanding of the term inhospitable, which elicits a pout from his younger brother. Switching gears, Ehan probes Yuhan about his motive for this visit. He preempts any financial requests, suggesting that if money is what he's after, he'd better keep dreaming, but Yuhan clarifies his intentions, stating that he's there to extend an opportunity to Ehan. Yuhan then unveils his grand proposal. He wants Ehan to act as his guardian. Given his minor status, he requires a guardian for his appointments. As Ehan starts to respond, Yuhan interjects, requesting to be escorted to cardiothoracic surgery. This catches Ehan's attention. With newfound confidence, Yuhan emphasizes the unique nature of his offer, one that only a sibling could extend, the honor of serving as his guardian. Several hours later, Haen finds herself sitting across from Yuhan, trying to explain that he's wandered into the wrong department. He tells her he's read that the large arteries around the wrist are all connected to the heart. As she remains silent, he adds that he's been feeling a strange tingling sensation from his fingertips right up to his heart. He wants to ensure it's nothing serious. Haen thinks his reasoning is somewhat plausible, but also a bit far-fetched. She glances at Ehan, who is quietly observing the conversation, hoping he might chime in as Yuhan's guardian. When Ehan continues his silence, she reassures them both that Yuhan's hand injury has no connection to his heart. Yuhan questions her certainty, and Ehan jests that if she were to examine Yuhan closely, she'd surely find something amiss. Haen playfully chides him for his remark, thinking him as frosty as ever. His only response is to echo her words back with a questioning look. She turns back to Yuhan, assuring him he's fine. Yuhan then starts to describe his symptoms: anxiety, sweating, breathlessness, and a feeling like his heart is about to stop. This catches Hagen's attention. She asks him when these symptoms occur, and he confesses they usually happen when his brother is on his tail, all the while avoiding Ehan's icy stare. Haen decides to use her stethoscope to check his heartbeat and instructs him to lift his shirt. Yuhan complies, blushing slightly while Ehan grinds his teeth, visibly irritated by the situation and questioning his decision to be here. Haen listens to Yuhan's heartbeat, finding nothing unusual, while Yuhan steals a glance at Ehan, smirking as he wonders if his brother's jealousy is causing him discomfort. Haen informs Yuhan that his heart rate is slightly elevated, to which an annoyed Ehan thinks somewhat dramatically that Yuhan deserves a dose of karma. Sensing the tension, Haen inquires if there's any issue between them. They both deny it simultaneously, raising her suspicions, but she decides not to press further. Instead, she thanks Yuhan for his help that fateful night, causing Ehan to flinch, but Yuhan corrects her, saying it was she who saved him. As she apologizes for the incident, he dismisses her apology, blaming it on the bank lady. He then invites her out for dinner as a token of his gratitude, but she promises to join him next time as she's swamped at the moment. Undeterred, Yuhan insists she comes to dinner, mentioning a fantastic restaurant nearby. When she asks what kind of restaurant it is, he simply grins and says, "Takbaki." Yuhan keeps nudging Haen for the dinner date when Ehan suddenly breaks the tension with a shout of his younger brother's name, shooting him a stern glare. He thanks Haen for her time, adding an awkward note to the atmosphere. Haen stands, hesitating, while Ehan busies himself with his phone. Yuhan observes them, speculating about their relationship status, given their inability to maintain eye contact. Breaking the silence, Haen brings up the topic of the VIP ward with Ehan, who suggests they discuss it later. She insists on addressing it immediately due to the looming deadline. Ehan, however, pleads busyness and hunger, leading Yuhan to quip about his brother's frosty demeanor being the reason he's still single. Seeing no way out, Ehan invites Haen to join them for dinner to discuss the matter. She reminds him of his earlier claim of being too busy, to which he coolly responds that everyone has to eat. Throughout the exchange, Yuhan squirms in his chair, observing the duo closely. When Ehan announces they'll be having pork cutlets for dinner, Yuhan is shocked, thinking his brother has completely lost it. After some persuasion, Haen blushes and finally agrees to join them, leaving the room to fetch her coat. At the restaurant, Haen thoughtfully cuts Yuhan's food into bite-sized pieces to accommodate his injured hand. During the meal, Yuhan curiously asks his brother how he discovered the place, and Ehan explains that Haen is a fan of pork cutlets and inquires if she's enjoying the meal. She compares it favorably to the hospital cafeteria food, surprising Yuhan, who had no idea hospital food could be so tasty. Yuhan then offers Haen a gift as a token of gratitude for saving his life. She declines the gift but requests the tie he used as a makeshift bandage. Ehan shoots her a surprised glance, while Yuhan admits he threw the tie away, leading to Hagen's imagined bonus money flying out the window. As they continue eating, Ehan surprises his brother by sharing some of his food with him, prompting Yuhan to mentally exclaim in delight. The conversation then shifts to Hagen's career choice, and she confides that she chose cardiothoracic surgery due to a promise she made, regardless of whether the person she made it to remembers it or not. She looks at Ehan, assuring him that promises are meant to be kept, even if they might seem foolish to others. Ehan assures her that he doesn't find it strange and believes her, causing her to blush and her heart to flutter. After a satisfying meal, Ehan reaches for the bill, displaying the classic corporate charm. Just as Haen starts to voice a question, he playfully shushes her, nodding toward Yuhan and jesting about his uncanny ability to eavesdrop. Right on cue, Yuhan pipes up from behind, teasingly questioning their awkward standoff, given their dating status. Haen swiftly rebuts his presumption with a light-hearted quip about their not-so-awkward dynamics. As they prepare to leave, Yuhan announces a detour to a nearby store. He pleads with them to wait, to which Ehan issues a mock warning that they won't hesitate to leave him behind if he takes too long. Once Yuhan is out of earshot, Ehan turns to Haen, offering her a free pass to vent about Yuhan if she wishes. Haen, however, seems perplexed, asking why she would want to badmouth him. Ehan shrugs, admitting it's something he tends to do quite often. An awkward silence follows, prompting Haen to break the ice. She musters the courage to ask Ehan about any potential compensation for babysitting Yuhan. Ehan, anticipating her question, cuts her off, confirming there's no paycheck involved. This doesn't surprise her, yet she confesses she felt obliged to agree since Yuhan is, after all, just a kid. As they stroll in silence, Ehan senses Haen has more to ask. He nudges her to speak up, and she hesitates before finally voicing her thoughts. She remarks on how the rumors about Ehan and Yuhan's strained relationship might just be hearsay, given how Ehan had shared his food with Yuhan earlier. She adds that the two brothers seem quite similar, much to Ehan's chagrin. He immediately refutes her statement, adamant about their dissimilarities. Haen insists they're alike, attributing the differences to their significant age gap. Ehan reluctantly confirms that he is indeed 16 years older than Yuhan. Haen then shares her initial expectations of their relationship. She had imagined them as stereotypical rich heirs, constantly at loggerheads, much like a dramatic fight for the crown in a soap opera. Ehan, in his typical corporate demeanor, gazes at Haen for a moment before shouting out to Yuhan, who is across the street. The sudden outburst startles Haen, causing her to instinctively reach for Ehan's arm. Ehan, with an air of casual curiosity, asks Yuhan what he would do if he were told that Haen could take over the Seo Moon Group. Yuhan, ever the jester, hollers back about transforming it into a full-blown entertainment agency. Turning back to Haen, Ehan gives her a knowing look, introducing her to the wild imagination of his brother. As Haen attempts to disentangle herself from his arm, Ehan playfully tightens his grip, reminding her of Yuhan's sharp observational skills. Yuhan soon returns, announcing his next shopping spree for focaccia bread since the previous store had run out. Once Yuhan is out of earshot again, Ehan reassures Haen that his family isn't harboring any dark secrets, hoping this answers her question. Haen withdraws her hand from his arm, admitting she might have misunderstood their relationship due to Ehan's seemingly indifferent attitude towards Yuhan. She muses aloud about their striking physical resemblance yet contrasting personalities, describing Yuhan as the more jovial and playful one. Ehan grumbles about Yuhan's carefree demeanor, confessing it irks him to see his own face so devoid of seriousness. Haen can't help but burst into laughter at this, attempting to stifle it behind her hand. However, Ehan notices her amusement and, caught up in the moment, asks her why she doesn't like him. Haen feigns deafness, leading Ehan to remind her of their unfinished conversation from before. He brings up the time when he asked her if she had something special to share with him, and he repeats his question. Haen, caught off guard, finally confesses that she had planned to warn him not to fall for her, as it tends to happen quite often. Just then, Yuhan appears with his coveted focaccia bread, providing Haen with the perfect distraction. She greets Yuhan enthusiastically, engaging him in a conversation about the bread, while Ehan watches her, wishing she had been more upfront with him from the start. The next day, we see Ehan engrossed in a mountain of books in the study room of his family's residence. His father walks in, a hint of surprise in his voice as he notes Ehan's unusual interest in the study, considering his infrequent visits. He reminds Ehan that he had already taken all his books the previous year. Ehan responds casually, mentioning he was just checking if there were any remnants of his grandfather's belongings. His father points out that it's been ages since his grandfather passed, and they've sorted through everything already. He adds that Yuhan might have taken some items, and the rest could be in the company archives. Curious, he asks Ehan what he's searching for. Ehan shrugs off the question, making his way out of the study, only to halt at his father's mention of a call from the head of Juhan Bank regarding a minor incident at the gallery opening. Ehan rolls his eyes at the understatement, recalling how the incident resulted not only in Yuhan getting injured but also in a barrage of hateful words from the bank head's daughter. He remembers Haen brushing off her own hurt with an "I'm okay," causing him to marvel at her resilience. His father advises him to keep personal matters separate from business, to which Ehan agrees. He then requests his father to scout reliable individuals for the VIP ward. His father brings up an upcoming surgery for an Arab royal, stressing the potential complications if things don't go smoothly. Ehan reassures him with a confident smile, hinting at someone he knows who never fails to give their best. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Haen is lost in thought as she navigates past her colleagues, oblivious to their presence. She's preoccupied with Ehan's reaction when she had shared the promise she made regarding her career choice. So deep in her musings, she doesn't even notice Juno's frantic waving until he's right beside her. One glance at Juno's disheveled appearance has her jokingly asking him to keep his distance lest he hurt her eyes. Juno, accustomed to her playful banter, reaches into his pocket and hands her an envelope filled with cash. With a sheepish grin, he confesses that this is all he has since the recent stock market setback has left him a little strapped for cash. Haen, overwhelmed by his generosity, jokingly threatens to plant a kiss on him for being the best. With a gleeful smile, she counts the cash, a total of 470,061, and thanks him sincerely before heading off. He trails behind her, musing aloud that if it weren't for his stock crash the previous day, he could have handed her an extra 200,000. Upon hearing that the plummeting stocks were from Yuhan Bank, Haen reveals that she had withdrawn all her savings from there, but he responds with a sarcastic remark about her withdrawal not making much difference. He then shares a rumor about the bank's foreign investors pulling out overnight. Despite her outward show of sympathy for Juno, Haen can't help but feel a smidgen of satisfaction thinking about the bank head's daughter. Spotting some fellow residents, she informs Juno about her need to greet their VIP patient, catching him off guard as he was unaware of her volunteering. As she bids him goodbye, he reminds her about the remaining 7.8 million won from their deal. Haen shoots him a glare but quickly replaces it with a smile, telling him to say whatever makes him feel better, even as he stammers out an apology. As she leaves to join her colleagues, Juno is left wondering about her well-being. Her fellow residents express their relief at having her in the VIP wing, confessing they were initially nervous. Haen responds by encouraging them to remember who they are. In unison, they proudly proclaim themselves as the unbeatable CS department, cheering loudly, oblivious to the figure approaching them. Earlier on, Ehan was engrossed in the tranquility of the indoor garden when his assistant informed him about the VIP's arrival. Ehan casually inquired about any news from Yuhan Bank, and his assistant shared the latest gossip about the bank's head seemingly wallowing in despair. With a smirk, Ehan remarked on how melodrama seemed to be a family trait, recalling the bank head's daughter's tearful display the other night. The assistant added that the bank head was fervently denying any connections between the incident and the Seo Moon Group and hinted at a potential hospital visit soon. Ehan, with a playful glint in his eyes, instructed his assistant to pass a message to the bank head: if he dares to cross paths with Ehan, he'll withdraw every single penny from the bank. As they strolled towards the elevator heading for the lobby, the assistant couldn't resist bringing up Dr. Yoon. With a knowing grin, he suggested she'd be pleasantly surprised to learn about Ehan's recent actions on her behalf. Ehan, however, disagreed, indicating he had no intentions of revealing anything, leaving his assistant puzzled. After all, according to the assistant's wisdom derived from dramas, women generally appreciate it when men take their side and look out for them. Ehan merely shrugged off his assistant's advice, choosing to keep his actions under wraps. Ehan's mind then drifted back to a recent encounter at his parents' house. He had bumped into Yuhan, his mother, and Aunt Hyen in the living room. His aunt had tried to persuade him to stay, but Ehan clarified he had only dropped by to seek his father's help, which was already sorted. His mother playfully asked if he needed anything from her, like a sparkly little thing showing off her ring. To their surprise, Ehan agreed, much to his mother's delight and Yuhan's annoyance. Ehan then swiped the toy seal from Yuhan's grasp, expressing his preference for Yuhan not to carry such things around. As he made his exit, Aunt Hyen halted him, offering him a last chance to seek a favor from her before she embarked on her month-long yacht excursion around the Yellow Sea. Ehan, curious, asked if she had purchased a yacht, to which she affirmed. Aunt Hyen, a woman of immense wealth shuttling between New York and Seoul, boasted one of Korea's largest individual cash reserves, remarkably without any business ties. It was then that Ehan queried about her banking choice in Korea. Inside the elevator, Ehan's thoughts were a whirlwind. His father's stern warning about not mixing personal life with business echoed in his mind. He couldn't help but think of Haen and her blunt confession that she wasn't in love with him. He found himself racking his brain, trying to figure out why she didn't like him and what he could do to change her feelings. As they stepped out of the elevator, Ehan absent-mindedly headed in the wrong direction. His assistant, ever vigilant, gently steered him towards the lobby. But Ehan was having none of it. He waved off the lobby just as he overheard Hagen's voice praising Juno as the best. Peering down, Ehan spotted Haen and Juno together, a sight that irked him. His assistant suggested that perhaps Haen and Juno were just friends, though he didn't sound too convinced. They watched as Haen left Juno's side to engage with her colleagues. Ehan couldn't help but muse to himself, for someone who always claimed to be busy, Haen sure had time for chit-chat. His assistant defended her, pointing out that surgeons like Haen always seem busy because they're constantly shadowed by others trying to learn from them. As Ehan observed the scene, he recalled Hagen's warning about not falling for her. With a resolute sigh, he decided to head back to his office. His assistant asked if he planned to greet Dr. Yoon, to which Ehan replied with a definitive no, but just as he started to walk away, a voice calling out for Haen stopped him in his tracks. Ehan's instincts had always served him well, both personally and professionally. And right now, his gut was telling him that this new guy, Changsung, was not going to be satisfied with just being friends with Haen. Haen looks on as Changsung strides over to her, his entourage of interns trailing behind him. He playfully mentions that she's been spending a lot of time with Juno lately, enough to fuel rumors they might be dating, and cheekily inquires if she's seeing Juno. With a casual air of nonchalance, Haen deftly deflects his question, citing her busy schedule. She begins to make her exit, her residence in tow, but halts when Changsung remarks how she's always been kind to Juno, even back when they were classmates and now colleagues. He then throws out a suggestion, why not send their teams on their way and grab a coffee together? A hint of annoyance flashes across Hagen's face, but she masks it with a polite smile. She tells him she has patients to attend to. Changsung brushes off her duties, stating she should delegate and shouldn't be burdened with rounds. He even goes as far as saying she probably can't delegate because she lacks the manpower, and if he could, he would lend her some of his doctors. Haen assures him she's managing just fine, but Changsung continues his relentless chatter. One of Hagen's residents, fed up with Changsung's antics, gears up to confront him but is held back by another resident. Meanwhile, Ijuan's assistant, watching the scene unfold from upstairs, nudges Ehan, suggesting he should step in. Ehan, visibly irritated, grumbles about Changsung's typical behavior. Finally, the resident can't take it anymore. He steps up to Changsung, telling him Haen needs to leave. The audacity of a junior doctor interfering in a senior-level conversation irks Changsung, while Haen simply fixes him with a cool glare. Changsung accuses Haen of pretending to be busy before stepping into the elevator with his interns. He insists they should take the elevator first since they're the ones truly busy and bringing in the hospital's revenue, hence deserving the perks. As the elevator doors begin to close, he suggests that Haen wait for the next one due to space constraints or perhaps take the stairs. But just as the doors are about to shut, Haen wedges her foot in the gap, forcing them open. She calls out to Changsung, asking him where he thinks he's going. Caught off guard, Changsung glances at his visibly uncomfortable interns, who are suddenly finding the elevator walls fascinating. He turns back to Haen, questioning if she was addressing him. With a casual air of authority, she affirms that she is indeed upset but dismisses his suggestion to take their conversation outside. Instead, she orders his interns to vacate the elevator, a move that leaves them visibly startled. Changsung questions if her annoyance stems from him snagging the elevator first, to which she responds that she's not just upset, she's livid. She opens up about how he landed his current position because she declined the offer despite having the highest score. She mentions how his department head pleaded with her to join them, adding that even if she had 100 chances to rewrite history, she'd still choose her current path. This revelation stokes the flames of Changsung's anger. Addressing her interns next, she points out they're running late and makes a beeline for the elevator. Changsung challenges her, asking if her present attitude is a result of his offhand comments. She fires back, saying she wouldn't have minded if he was just bantering with her, but if he dares to mess with her doctors again, she'll make him regret it. She then labels him an a-hole, further incensing him. As the elevator doors close, she throws him a cheeky wink, adding she likes to call all her friends that. Changsung kicks the closed elevator door in frustration. Ehan's assistant is left gawking in disbelief, remarking he's never seen Dr. Yoon behave so assertively before. Ehan recalls his assistant once questioning why he wouldn't tell Haen about his actions on her behalf. He now understands why. As he walks away, he muses that anyone messing with his girlfriend definitely warrants retaliation. Later, Haen is seen explaining the surgical procedure to her VIP patient, a foreigner who relies on his interpreter to understand the medical jargon. She assures him that the surgery will only take 4 hours. The patient, through his interpreter, inquires if there's an option for a less time-consuming surgery, leading her to explain the health benefits of this specific operation. Following a brief discussion with his interpreter, the patient wants to know if Haen herself will be conducting his surgery. Haen, curious, questions if this query stems from concerns about her age or gender. The interpreter, unsure of the patient's reason, prepares to ask him directly, but Haen stops him. She believes that such a question might cause unnecessary discomfort post-surgery. Then, to everyone's surprise, Haen switches to fluent German, the patient's native language. She assures him she'll conduct his surgery with the same care as if it were her own heart. This personal touch puts the patient at ease. As they exit the room, her residents express their amazement at her linguistic skills, asking how long she's known German. She casually mentioned she picked up the language when she heard it could earn her a bonus. Given her current workload, she figures it won't be long until she can pay off her debt and everything will be over, but the thought of an end doesn't bring her the relief she anticipated, which puzzles her. One of her residents brings up the prospect of their department gaining favor with the chairman if the VIP wing performs well, pulling her out of her thoughts. The team begins to speculate what might please the chairman. One resident excitedly shares a rumor about the chairman's younger brother visiting the hospital frequently, probing Haen for details about his checkups and whether he fits the stereotype of a wealthy heir. Haen thinks back on Yuhan's character when one resident suggests there's a 20-year age gap between the chairman and his brother. Subconsciously, Haen corrects him, stating it's a 16-year gap, quickly adding that she thinks it's 16 years. The resident dismisses the detail, speculating that the chairman must resent his younger brother for disrupting his sole claim to the family assets. Haen counters, suggesting that despite their age difference, she doesn't believe there's much sibling rivalry between the two. All the while, she's wondering how she can clear up any misconceptions about her knowledge of the family dynamics. One of the residents, eager to add some spice to the conversation, mentions a friend working at Seomun Auto. According to this friend, there's a rumor that the chairman once tried to hurl his younger brother out of his office window and even obtained a firearm license due to his siblings' antics. Haen, having had her fill of gossip, intervenes, advising them to steer clear of such hearsay while navigating the hospital corridors. The residents quickly apologize for their lapse in judgment. One resident, however, can't help but admire how Haen stands up for the chairman. She swiftly corrects him, stating she's not defending the chairman per se, but merely suggesting they shouldn't buy into narratives steeped in prejudice and bias. Internally though, she finds herself wondering why she's going to such lengths to defend Ehan. Perhaps, she muses, it's because he's just as hardworking as they are, tirelessly striving in the face of adversity, much like their colleague, CS. Her reflections seem to resonate with the residents. They start contemplating whether the chairman might be a man of dedication and vision, someone who's often misunderstood due to his youthful charisma. She adds that he could simply be an average guy, albeit one who ensures people around him are eating well and occasionally flashes a warm smile. She then reprimands herself mentally, wondering what's gotten into her. Shaking off her thoughts, she suggests they all grab some food. As they discuss the cafeteria's uncanny obsession with pork cutlets, they spot Ehan and Yuhan approaching. The residents greet Ehan, who returns the greeting but continues walking past them with Yuhan. Haen feels a twinge of disappointment, even though she knows it would be odd if he'd stopped to chat. The residents, meanwhile, wonder if Ehan overheard their earlier conversation. As they head for the elevator, Haen receives a text message. After a quick glance at her phone, she asks her residents to go ahead and eat without her. Yuhan, having overheard the conversation between Haen and her residents, turns to Ehan with a smirk. He wonders aloud where all those wild rumors about Ehan originated. He then teases Ehan about his silent tolerance of the gossip, questioning whether it didn't irk him at all. Unfazed, Ehan shrugs it off, stating that what truly matters is that there's someone who sees him for who he really is. Settling behind his desk, Ehan chuckles at the idea of a chairman cornering every employee they encounter to grill them about office chatter. Yuhan, never one to let go of an opportunity for banter, asks if Ehan just happened to bump into Haen and her residence. Despite Ehan's glare, Yuhan continues his playful teasing, even throwing in a wink for good measure. Ignoring his brother's antics, Ehan starts typing on his phone. Yuhan, perched on a nearby chair, probes further, asking if something happened with Haen. He suggests that Ehan seems as anxious as a teenager about to ask someone out. Ehan, gripping his phone tighter, retorts that he's already dating Haen. Having just sent a text to Haen, asking her to keep her evening free after 7 p.m., Ehan finds himself likening a stray leaf fluttering by to Haen. His mind wanders to the anticipation of asking her out and awaiting her response. To distract himself, he asks Yuhan about his love life. Yuhan, oozing confidence, boasts about dating 14 girls from his class in the past year alone. Suddenly, Ehan's secretary calls to inform him that Haen has arrived. He instructs her to send Haen in. As she enters, she greets Yuhan before turning to Ehan, asking him if her surprise visit startled him. Ehan reassures her and offers her a seat, which she declines, stating she has something to discuss, but won't be staying long. Ehan nods, letting her know that he too has something on his mind. He comments on how busy she seemed when he saw her in the VIP wing earlier and that it looked like she was having an engaging chat with her residents. At this, Haen blushes, causing Ehan to furrow his brows, wondering why the mention of her residence would make her blush. All the while, Yuhan is enjoying the show, grinning from ear to ear. Ehan catches sight of his brother's cheeky grin and playfully orders him out of his office, but Yuhan counters, claiming he wants to spend time with Haen, the woman who saved his life. Haen, unaware of the brotherly banter, chastises Ehan for his harsh tone with his only sibling, leaving him with no choice but to grudgingly allow Yuhan to stay. He then addresses Haen, asking what she wants to discuss. Yuhan, surprised at Ehan's rare display of patience, thinks his brother has truly changed. Haen, breaking the ice, asks if he holds a firearm license. When he denies it, she triumphantly exclaims she knew it. Ehan, with a knowing smile, insists that that surely wasn't her main reason for visiting. Haen, suddenly hesitant, confesses she won't be able to make it for dinner due to an urgent matter. Ehan, masking his disappointment with a hint of anger, tells her it's fine and dismisses her, though they both know it's far from fine. Once Haen leaves, Yuhan teases his brother, suggesting she might be seeing someone else. Ehan shoots him a frosty glare, growling his name and swiftly changing the subject to their mother. Later, we see Haen meeting Ehan's mother, Mrs. Cha, at a restaurant. As they settle in over tea, Mrs. Cha apologizes for the sudden invitation, which Haen brushes off politely. They engage in small talk, with Haen wondering about the real purpose of their meeting. Mrs. Cha mentions having asked Yuhan to distract Ehan for a while, but expresses uncertainty over its effectiveness. Nevertheless, she adds with a sweet smile that she's glad to spend time with Haen. Haen admires Mrs. Cha's grace, kindness, and the warm aura that surrounds her. Yet, she can't help but suspect that there must be a specific reason for this clandestine meeting. As their conversation progresses, Haen addresses Mrs. Cha directly, reminding her of the 5 remaining dates with Ehan. She recalls her initial fear of meeting Ehan's parents, worried they might not approve of their relationship. However, Ehan assured her that she would have to endure it since he was paying her a significant amount. Now, she can't refund the money already paid by Ehan. Mrs. Cha looks puzzled, and Haen quickly apologizes, stating she was merely thinking about Ehan. Mrs. Cha suggests that Haen must truly care for Ehan if he pops into her thoughts so easily. Haen promises to treat Ehan well, silently adding that she'll do so until their contract ends. Then, Mrs. Cha slides an envelope across the table. She says that if Haen genuinely cares for Ehan, she can't hold back any longer. Haen, taken aback, wonders if Mrs. Cha is trying to pay her off to end her relationship with Ehan, leaving her pondering her next move. Before she could utter a word, a commanding voice instructs her to rise. She looks up, startled, to find Ehan's stern gaze upon her. He repeats his order and Haen, confused and slightly panicked, questions his unexpected presence. Unfazed, Ehan warns her that if she doesn't comply, he'll resort to carrying her out of the restaurant. She quickly stands and follows him out, not wanting to cause a scene. Back at the table, Mrs. Cha takes a leisurely sip of her tea, remarking that she expected Haen to put up more of a fight, even when faced with Ehan's threat. A few tables away, we see Yuhan attempting to blend in, hiding under a baseball cap. Setting her cup down, Mrs. Cha gestures for Yuhan to join her. She chides him for failing to keep Ehan occupied despite the generous sum she'd given him, but Yuhan defends himself, stating that dealing with Ehan is no easy task, all while clutching the envelope that had been intended for Haen. He then jokingly asks Mrs. Cha if she's emulating dramatic TV shows where mothers bribe potential daughters-in-law to leave their sons. Mrs. Cha dismisses his notion, explaining that the envelope merely contained Ehan's fortune reading. Outside the restaurant, Ehan leads Haen further away. She pleads with him to slow down, addressing him as Chairman Seo. Ehan reminds her that he prefers to be called by his first name, questioning whether she's still unsure about their relationship status. Haen blushes, asking him to release her hand. He complies, then inquires if his mother's invitation was the reason for her canceling their date. Haen admits that she couldn't refuse his mother's request. Ehan then asks if she intended to accept the envelope and sever ties with him. This accusation irks Haen. She retorts that she neither accepted nor opened the envelope, reminding him that she's capable of making her own decisions without his constant scrutiny. Meanwhile, back in the restaurant, Yuhan expresses his surprise to Mrs. Cha about her giving Haen Ehan's fortune reading despite not knowing her well. Mrs. Cha simply responds that Haen is the woman Ehan loves. Back outside, Haen wraps up her passionate monologue and decides it's time to head home. She catches herself wondering why she's feeling so flustered. She could have simply called to cancel their dinner, but instead, she found herself walking all the way to Ehan's office just to see his face. She questions what's so appealing about him when he jumps to conclusions and loses his temper before hearing her out. Back in the cozy warmth of the restaurant, Yuhan poses a question to his mother. He wonders if Ehan and Haen might not be exactly as they appear, echoing Aunt Hyen's earlier suspicions. Outside, Ehan grabs Haen's shoulders, spinning her around to face him. Inside, Mrs. Cha counters Yuhan's doubts, asserting that if there was nothing between Ehan and Haen wouldn't have met her behind Ehan's back. Ehan, locking eyes with Haen, confesses his own struggles. He tells her she's not the only one having a tough time, asking her to consider how he might be feeling, being in love with a hard-working cardiothoracic surgeon. His words leave Haen taken aback. He quickly assures her he's not teasing, and there's no need for her to question his sincerity. The next day at work, during a meeting about an upcoming surgery, Haen finds herself lost in thought. Her reverie is broken when Dr. Choi calls her out, asking her opinion. He notes her unusual silence, wondering if she has issues with him leading the operation. When she denies it, he advises her that, as a doctor, patience is key. After the meeting, a colleague sympathizes with Haen over Dr. Choi's harshness, but she's too preoccupied to pay attention. She's replaying the previous night's conversation with Ehan in her mind. His confession of love, his expectation of a response from her, and his tender gesture of adjusting her coat against the cold night air, all these moments make her heart race. This sudden surge of emotion nearly makes her dizzy, but a quick-thinking colleague catches her and guides her to a chair, asking if she's okay. He surmises she's overworking herself with back-to-back surgeries throughout the week. Though she insists she's fine, he offers to assist her in her afternoon surgery and advises her to rest until then. Despite his concern, Haen decides to keep herself busy, believing it's the best remedy for her racing heart. The night before, Ehan had asked Haen for a clear response. In her confusion, she had requested a day to think it over. Now, she finds herself wondering why on earth she had assumed a day would be sufficient to untangle the web of feelings within her. She instructs the concerned doctor to prepare for surgery, assuring him she's alright. But as he leaves, she admits to herself that she desperately needs a moment to introspect, but time is a luxury she can't afford. She remembers promising Ehan she would have an answer by 7 p.m. the following evening, and he'd agreed to wait. Just then, she sees her resident Kyungmin bounding towards her, hollering her name with urgency. She asks if there's an issue, perhaps something related to the anesthesiologist. Kyungmin, catching his breath, asks if she recalls a foreign patient. After a few moments, she does and inquires if the patient has been located. Kyungmin explains that while they haven't exactly found him, he posits that the patient would have sought help elsewhere. He had posted about it on social media, alerting all members of their medical association. An email from a friend in Incheon suggests they may have admitted the patient. Haen scans the email, asking where exactly in Incheon this hospital is. Kyungmin admits it's slightly beyond Incheon, but assures her it's not too far. Meanwhile, Ehan's assistant hands him a box containing records of former CEOs. He offers to sift through them for whatever Ehan needs, but Ehan dismisses him, stating it's hard to articulate what he's looking for. The assistant, puzzled, leaves Ehan alone with his thoughts. Ehan stares at the box, reminiscing about Hagen's flustered reaction when he confessed his feelings. He recalls her struggle to breathe, and her shock at seeing the envelope. He reassures himself that he can offer her much more than what's in that envelope, but he's glad he didn't voice this thought to her. He instructs his assistant to leave the box, promising to go through it later. In his solitude, Ehan vows to confess his feelings to Haen as many times as it takes for her to believe him. His phone vibrates, interrupting his thoughts. He picks it up, smiling as he acknowledges his feelings for Haen. Ehan picks up a call from Haen, mentally preparing himself to stay calm and composed. He'd overreacted a bit the previous day, and he's determined not to make the same mistake again. His assistant begins to give him some privacy, but halts in his tracks when he hears Ehan's voice rise in anger. Having worked with the Seomoon group for 4 years, he knows this tone of voice usually signals trouble. Haen starts off with an apology, stating she won't be able to meet him as planned. Ehan takes a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. He reminds her of her promise to give him an answer. She quickly reassures him that she isn't trying to avoid him and pleads for his understanding. Ehan sinks into a nearby chair, rubbing his temples as she explains she's currently on a search mission that's taking longer than expected. When he asks who she's looking for and she reveals the name, he can't help but feel surprised. Still, he manages to ask through gritted teeth where she is. His assistant observes from a distance, recalling a similar situation where Ehan's anger led to a major reshuffling of the executive board at Seomoon Motors. He worries what this could mean for Haen. Ehan, meanwhile, tries to gauge how far away she is and learns she's stranded on Bakewell Island after missing the last boat. He asks about her return plan and she informs him she'll be back once the next boat arrives in the morning. She assures him she'll be back at work and it won't cause any disruptions. His response reveals his worry is more personal than professional. Feeling misunderstood, he tells her to rest and abruptly ends the call. His assistant, sensing the mood, offers him a car to go anywhere he needs. Ehan's response confuses him, leading to a query about his aunt's whereabouts. Back at the hospital, Hagen's resident colleague learns of her impromptu trip and berates Kyungmin for letting her go. Kyungmin retorts, pointing out they were both on duty and couldn't have gone with her. He also reveals Hagen's determination not to lose the patient again. The revelation leaves her colleague surprised and a little flustered. Elsewhere, on a boat in the middle of the ocean, Mrs. Cha and Hyen receive a call from Ehan. Hyen is surprised he's unblocked her and becomes suspicious when he asks her location. She teases him about asking for another favor and reminds him of his promise to be more grateful. His sincere apology takes her aback, and she agrees to turn the boat around upon his request. Early the next morning on Bakewell Island, Hyen finds herself perched outside the home of an elderly woman who kindly offered her a room for the night. She slipped into her shoes and is soaking up the pre-dawn air. The old woman appears, surprised to see Hyen up so early, reminding her that the first boat doesn't leave until sunrise. Hyen flashes a small smile, admitting she just needed some fresh air. Curious, the old woman asks about the individual Hyen is trying to find. The question hangs in the air like a heavy fog, and Hyen's heart sinks. She's not entirely sure who she's searching for anymore. The elderly woman, sharp as a tack, spots Hyen's growing sadness and assumes she must be on the brink of tears. She wonders aloud if someone has wronged Hyen or swiped her money. Hyen forces a smile, prompting the older woman to warn her, a smile like that won't get her far on this island. The woman shares that she's seen all sorts come and go over the years, many searching for someone or something. But she warns Hyen that a half-hearted search will yield no results. Hyen's determination flares at this challenge, and she asks if the woman believes she can find the person she's looking for. The old woman huffs, declaring that it's clear from Hyen's eyes that she'd traverse the globe to find this individual. She's had plenty of visitors with that same fire in their eyes. Despite the elderly woman's skepticism, Hyen decides to take a brisk walk. The woman calls after her, cautioning her about the chilly winds. As Hyen disappears down the path, the older woman shakes her head, convinced that Hyen won't get far with her current attitude. Moments later, the gate creaks open, and a new visitor arrives, their determined gaze matching the description the old woman had just given. Back in the car, Mrs. Cha is deep in thought while Hyen teases her about her recent encounter with her son. It's not often that Ehan begs for something, and Hyen can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. She reassures Mrs. Cha that her heart is still beating and there's no need to keep paying Yuhan to be her hospital guardian anymore. Meanwhile, Hyen is on the beach, lost in thought. She recalls Ehan's last words before he abruptly ended their call. She wishes she could have heard more from him, held on to his voice a little longer. She blushes, grappling with the realization of her feelings for Ehan, tracing back to when he first admitted his love for her. She wonders if his feelings began the moment he brought her food, or perhaps the day he sought her out in the cafeteria, or maybe even the time he couldn't hide his grin while watching her laugh. She shakes her head, flustered. She questions what Ehan's real girlfriend must be like, remembering the day she grabbed his hand to sign a receipt. She can't help but feel a twinge of jealousy at the thought of him with someone else. But she shrugs it off, telling herself it's alright as long as they both feel the same way. Spotting a yacht anchored offshore, she thinks of how Ehan always stood out at the cafeteria, and how he doesn't seem to fit into her world. She resolves to tell him once she's back that their relationship is nothing more than that of a borrower and a lender. Just then, she hears footsteps behind her, and turning around, she finds herself face to face with Ehan. Hyen, taken aback by Ehan's sudden appearance on the island, blurts out her surprise. Ehan flashes her a cheeky grin and admits he couldn't resist coming to see her. He recalls how the elderly woman had asked him to wait for Hyen, but being the stubborn mule he is, he'd set off to find her instead. He chuckles to himself, thinking how he'd always prided himself on his rationality and maturity, yet here he was, gallivanting around Bakewell Island in pursuit of Hyen. As he wandered about, he found himself questioning if she took their promise lightly, or if she genuinely believed she could find someone in such a manner. He spotted her near the lighthouse, and his heart leaped. He'd wanted to find her so he could bombard her with questions, but seeing her there, those questions seemed to dissolve into the sea breeze. The truth hit him then, he'd raced over to the island like a lovesick teenager, because he couldn't get her out of his mind. A sheepish Hyen reminds Ehan that she'd promised to return the next day, to which he replies that patience isn't exactly his strong suit, hence his impromptu visit. She points to the gleaming yacht offshore, asking if it belongs to him. Ehan dismisses the question, focusing instead on shielding her from the chilly wind with his scarf. Hyen tries to steer the conversation back to the yacht, but Ehan playfully tugs at the scarf, pulling her closer. He leans in, whispering that the color of the boat is the least of his concerns. He'll figure it out once he regains his senses. She starts to speak again, but he silences her with a soft whisper, asking her to close her eyes. When she complies, he seizes the moment, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. As she wraps her arms around him, reciprocating the kiss, Ehan pulls away slightly, his eyes twinkling with mischief. He asks if she wants him to stop, to which a blushing Haen shyly shakes her head. With a triumphant grin, he pulls her closer and kisses her once more. Back in Seoul, Hyen is lost in thought, remembering Ehan's surprise visit to the dock earlier. She had only agreed to turn the boat around because he'd promised to apologize, which he did, much to her and Mrs. Cha's astonishment. Mrs. Cha joins Hyen, confessing she'd had trouble sleeping the previous night. Hyen teases her about her late-night catalog browsing habits, and Mrs. Cha insists she just likes to stay on top of trends. Hyen doesn't buy it, reminding her how she'd selected wedding presents while shopping for Ehan's first birthday ring. Mrs. Cha blushes at the memory. Suddenly, Hyen remembers something she'd forgotten to tell Ehan and decides to text him, relieved that he'd finally unblocked her. On board the opulent yacht, Ehan and Haen find themselves in a cozy corner, snuggled up on a plush couch. As Ehan showers her with affectionate kisses, Haen playfully nudges him away, calling out his name in mild protest. Ehan, lost in the moment, continues to shower her with kisses along her neck. When she calls his name again, he finally pulls away, asking what's up. But before she can even utter a word, he pulls her back into a passionate kiss. She gently pushes him away and sits upright. Bemused, he asks her what's wrong, and she insists they need to talk. But Ehan pulls her closer, promising they'll talk, but right now, he wants to continue their moment. He leans in, but she stops him, insisting she needs to express something. This leaves Ehan slightly frustrated, but he quickly apologizes for rushing her, admitting that he is finding it hard to contain his feelings for her. Curious, Ehan asks her what she wants to share, fixing her with an intense gaze. This causes her to blush, and she momentarily forgets what she wants to say. Flustered, she stammers that they can carry on since they've already crossed a boundary, but this isn't what she initially wanted to convey. Seizing the opportunity, Ehan resumes their makeout session. But their moment is once again interrupted by the buzz of a phone. Ehan wishes to ignore it, but Haen insists it could be important. Grumbling about interruptions, he checks his phone, only to learn from his aunt's text that there are cameras installed on the yacht. This revelation angers him so much that he ends up crushing his phone. After getting dressed, the duo heads to the yacht's deck. Haen is visibly excited, taking in the breathtaking scenery. Ehan reminds her about their unfinished conversation, and she assures him that she hasn't forgotten her promise and isn't trying to evade him. As she continues to chatter, he cuts her off by tenderly calling her name. He takes her hand into his, gently intertwining their fingers, and pulls her close. He then asks her if she could turn back time before she saved the patient's life and if she would do anything differently. She tells him he doesn't need to hold her hands, and he retorts that her hands are too cold and surgeons need to protect their hands. He encourages her to answer his question, and she firmly states she wouldn't change a thing because she's a doctor. Ehan pulls her into a warm embrace, confessing that her conviction is why he trusts her and believes in her truthfulness. This heartfelt confession brings tears to her eyes, and she returns his hug, their hearts beating in sync. This seems like such a perfect ending, but this manhwa is still ongoing and so we're expecting new chapters. Until then, do check out other amazing recaps on our page. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ciao.